It's showtime. Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Dinner Club Jamboree. My friends Raven and Michael, with more to come, I'm sure. How are you all doing?
It's
a bit of a heat wave.
A bit of a what, Mike?
Heat wave.
Oh, yeah, we're having it out here as well. Yeah.
Still 95 degrees right now in the evening.
Yeah, I think it's probably about that right now here. Well, of course, it's an hour earlier here. And my kids were telling me, my son's visiting at the moment, and they had this massive heat wave in Britain where the temperature was over 100 degrees for like 5 days in a row. And I lived in Britain for 31 years, and the temperature never broke 100 degrees ever once. So they just were completely unprepared for it. You know, no one really, well, not no one, but almost no shops or offices have air conditioning, that kind of thing. Most people don't have air conditioning in their house. So, I mean, they were just sweltering and really not able to cope, you know?
I've been seeing videos from China where people's flip-flops are sticking to the ground. And,
Wow.
Yeah. And people have been hiding in caves or in department stores just to get out of the heat.
Wow.
Yep. Is that over 70 days now? They've been in a heat wave over 70 days.
Wow.
Yeah, we don't get a lot of news from them because they always like to tell us, "Oh, everything's okay, everything's okay."
Right. There's like very few reported deaths up at this point, but just because they're not reported doesn't mean they're not happening. It is
Oh,
true.
yeah. I mean, one of the things I worry about with my mom is the heat, because she's already got trouble breathing as it is because she got COPD. So, yeah. But the hottest day I've ever experienced was like when I was living in California before I ever moved away, and it was like 111 degrees. My best friend from the UK is in Las Vegas right now, is getting married in the coming week. And he posted the weather thing, that you got the weather app on your phone. It was 118 degrees.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't even know what that's like. I mean,
Well, it's a dry heat.
Well, thank God, right? I mean, if it was humid and that hot, you probably literally couldn't survive. I mean,
you drown.
Well, I think you'd drop for sure. I mean, you forget, because it is dry out here where I am right now in California, and you kind of forget the difference. Because when I lived in the UK, if it was 82 degrees in London, it felt hot as fuck. Here it's 82 degrees at 8 o'clock at night and it feels cool. Do you know what I mean? So it's just completely different because of the humidity. And my sister lives in Florida where it's ridiculously humid.
Yeah, New Jersey too. The entire East Coast, when it gets really hot, it's very swampy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's been like in the 90s all summer.
Wow.
It's been in the 90s, and it's you can't. You just the sweat. It's bad. It's been really rough.
See, anything 95 or less, I kind of like it, even though it is a little bit oppressive. But over 95 is unambiguously fucking hot, and I get really pissed off when it's like 98 or 99, and someone goes, "You think this is hot?" And then they quote some number that they've lived through before. I mean, obviously there's hotter, but I mean, yeah, I think 99 is fucking hot. Yeah, I do.
Absolutely.
Paul's frozen.
Paul froze.
Paul froze. He's a popsicle.
He doesn't feel like one right now.
He's a funksicle.
It's like when you have one of those Otter Pops that's like 5 years old in the back of your freezer.
Ew.
Yeah, funksicle.
Yeah.
The corn syrup inside of it is separated from the ice.
Oh yeah.
Somehow, you've had those.
Yeah. Oh wow, he's gone. He'll be back.
Yeah.
Well, Paul will be back. People. I mean, we are still streaming, of course, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hang on.
So, how's it been going?
It has been. You know what I mean?
I still don't have my whole setup set up, but I have my work laptop.
Are you in a new place?
No,
Okay.
but we had to get the air conditioning fixed in the house, and they had to go through the crawl space, and so my whole setup was taken apart so they could get to the entrances to the crawl space, which my setup was blocking,
Okay.
and that created a giant movement of stuff. As you can tell, there wasn't a lot of room in here anyway.
Right.
But one day I'll move when the housing market crashes.
Yeah, that might be when it happens, right? Hang on a sec. I have to. I'm gonna post that we're on, so maybe we'll drive some more people to the show. All right. I am here.
Marcus is in the chat.
I said more people. Hi, Marcus.
Yeah. Hi, Marcus. Marcus counts as a people.
Yes, that's why I said more, as in addition to what we have.
Mm-hmm.
My God. Let me see. Where? Here. Self-promotion. Sorry, I'm doing multiple things. I am like
It's okay.
a multitasking fool.
Hello.
Hey, watch our show.
What's whose show?
We're on the dinner club.
Oh, I will turn it on. I am I'm like 5 miles away from my house.
Okay.
So I
Well,
don't know.
we'll be waiting for you.
Okay.
All right.
My God.
I can only listen. I can't watch.
Why?
Why?
What?
Why?
Because I'm out on a run. I'm away. I'm working out.
Okay.
Okay. So if
It's
you
too
do-
hot for that shit.
Well, I'm over here like turning myself into a girl. So pretty much.
She busy.
Okay. We'll see in a little while.
She is making shit happen.
Yeah. Put me in my place. Priorities.
That was awesome.
Who else can we call?
Let's call Paul. Paul, where are you?
Okay.
Wow. Oh, hey. Oh, Autumn.
I hope California didn't fall into the ocean.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the person you are trying to reach has a voice.
Ugh. Set up your voicemail. Well, that was Paul.
Good Autumn. Autumn is panting and wheezing. She's either picking on you or she's letting you know she's busy turning into a girl.
Yeah. Yeah, she's wanting me to exercise. Had parked very far away from the venue so that she could watch me huff and puff.
Who you calling?
This one's Kazoom.
Oh, my.
Please leave a message after the tone. Press star to skip the instructions.
Hello, we're trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty. Please give us a call back.
Hi. So you want to know something funny, right?
Sure.
What?
So what we were just talking about my computer overheated.
Wow.
I'm outside and it's like 99 degrees or 98 degrees or whatever, and my computer overheated. So yeah, it's kind of funny, but I've got something under it now, so air can circulate. So hopefully that won't happen again. But yeah, sorry about that.
Wow.
We were just prank calling people.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah.
What did I miss? What was a good prank?
Oh, well, the one that you missed was when we called for you, and you didn't pick up the phone, and your voicemail isn't set up, by the way.
What's voicemail?
Voicemail?
That's a little joke. That's my sense of humor. Yeah, I know. I don't set stuff like that up. I don't really do anything with my technologies for answer the phone normally. Did you actually call me?
I did.
My phone must be in the house. Yeah, I don't think I have it out here. Yeah,
It's like an answering machine in the cloud.
right. Yeah, I don't go for all that. Like I don't get involved with my phone very much. Lots of people have like, when you call, they have the person's picture that comes up, so you know who it is that's calling or whatever. And some people have like different ringtones for different people as well. I am not that involved with my phone. It's just it's a means to an end for me, really.
Raven has the same screaming rant for everyone. It's, why the fuck did you call me? Just text me.
Well,
I don't like the phone.
I spent most of my life being told I was Generation X, but nowadays I guess I'm told I'm a boomer. So boomers like me, right? I like phone calls. I prefer phone calls to texts, and that all by itself, that makes me a boomer, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Hmm.
No, you need a little bit more points than that. Did Paul freeze again?
I don't know.
Overheat?
He might have. I have to delete a post. All right.
So,
There we go.
Raven, I know we've had this discussion before about what constitutes classic rock music to be
We
played
have?
on a classic rock station, right?
I
Yes, we
don't-
have.
Okay.
In various iterations, like if Smashing Pumpkins had made the song 1979, now it would be like 2004. Because if you count back, like from when they released that song,
Okay.
that many years, it'd be like a song called 2004.
Right.
Like when Brian Adams put out Summer of '69.
Right.
Yeah, that would be like summer of like 2011.
Maybe. When did that come out?
It was in the 80s.
I wanted the release date. 1984.
Yeah. So what's 15 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, what was 15 years ago? The summer of 2007. It doesn't
2007.
have the same ring to it, right?
Yeah.
Well, here's what I have to make you feel like the oldest that I have felt in a long fucking time. It takes 10 years of age for a song to make it onto the classic rock station. And now the very first album from Imagine Dragons is classic rock.
Wow.
With that whole radioactive song.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's classic rock now. That's how old we are.
I didn't know it took 10 years. Is that written somewhere?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's how Limp Bizkit and Korn got on there. That's classic rock.
Okay, so officially, technically, to become classic rock, it has to be 25 years old.
Oh, you're going to go with 25? That's
I,
much better for me.
I'm reading.
Yeah.
the screen. That's what it says.
Well, that would be a much better classic rock station because that would be the classic rock that I remember on classic rock station. But you never see stations nowadays with like 50s or 60s. It's all boldy oldies.
Yeah, I mean, there's just all kinds of. They're given all kinds of like different sites are giving different criteria, but none of them are giving any kind of a time period, just dates. Like, oh, mainly 70s and 80s and hard rock and metal, but they're not giving any time. Only one I've found, and it's an answer on Quora, that it's giving a time period, and it's saying 25 years. So, hey, you turned your light off.
I did. I'm seeing how I can adjust the lighting here to make more of my face show and not look like I'm getting interrogated.
I thought you were going to say a blowjob. So, I was going to say, you don't look like that.
That would be a very effective interrogation technique.
Threatening blowjobs?
Well, maybe offering first, because it's a new millennium where we shouldn't be forcing things on people.
I agree.
None of this is working.
I'm sorry. Wait, what? I'm not paying attention. What's going on?
Yeah, probably worse. I still look like I'm getting interrogated.
Variegated.
Well, we're just going to live with it.
It was better before.
Yeah, but that light from above, it's daylight spectrum, so I can see different light frequencies on my art. So I can see what it would look like on a wall where the window's shining through, and that light heats up. Fuckers are noticing that I don't have my nice chair. Look, my nice chair is right there, right behind me. I'm just on the other side of the fucking room.
I have no idea what that means, Autumn. I don't know what that means. But I am gonna have some potato chips that are flavored with Canada's favorite flavor, all dressed.
The old all dressed ones, yeah. So I had to come indoors because it's too hot outside and my computer won't handle it. So that's germane to what we were talking about before. So Raven, do you have those every day? Because I'm unashamed of the fact that I have crisps every single day.
No, I can't. I'll blow up like a house. Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Are you doing the fasting where you do it intermittently, where like it's every other day? You can have the crisps.
I tried. I can't. I can't go that long without eating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have tried. Can't do it. Peach does the every other day fasting.
I need something to eat on my fasting day, which I know is stupid to say, but it could be like something 0 calorie, like celery. I can munch celery all day and still feel good, like I can make it through the day, but I cannot do nothing.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that everybody hates because I can just pile away whatever or nothing, and it doesn't seem to matter one way or the other whether I'm eating a lot or if I'm eating very little. Except for like when I first moved back here to look after my mom, I had just going through a breakup, and so I was doing a lot of comfort eating, and the combination of doing a lot of comfort eating and also having all of the sudden sedentary lifestyle where I wasn't literally doing anything for like 150 hours a week, I had a paunch within like 3 weeks, and I was like, can't let that happen. And my vanity kicked in. But I mean, for most of my life, I've gotten away with eating without gaining weight. I've gotten away with eating almost anything I want, with a few exceptions. And whenever I do accidentally start to get myself with a couple of more spare tires, my vanity always stops me from going any further. So in that sense, it's a good thing. So what's happening out there in the great big wide world that's got you concerned or interested?
So we still have justice denied in that Trump is not arrested yet. Still.
What do you think about that? Do you think you think there's enough evidence to arrest him already?
On so many things. I mean, and then it's just as I'm hopeful that another thing will get him arrested. They throw another thing out there.
They have to go through the entire thing. They have to, dot every I, cross every T. They got to get everything perfect. But I honestly believe they're going to go get him.
Okay. During the week that's just gone between our last podcast, I did a poll on Twitter saying, do you think Trump will go to jail? And the options were he won't even be charged. That was A. Option B was he'll be charged but not convicted. Option C was convicted and incarcerated. And option D was dies unconvicted. If those are your four choices, friends, which way would you choose it?
Oh, boy. There's a fifth choice that I would lean towards.
Which is charged.
Flee the country.
Huh?
Flee the country.
Yeah, someone said that in my comments as well. They thought he'd skip.
I actually think there's a good possibility of that. Belarus will take him. Russia will take him. I believe he would absolutely abscond.
I mean, I know that, Belarus or Russia would be better than prison for Trump on the one hand, but Trump's got such a fucking massive ego problem that I think he would think of them as shithole countries, comparatively speaking, and not go because they're not good enough for him.
No, I actually don't believe that at all. I believe the exact opposite. He considers himself a close and personal friend of Putin, and Putin is the wealthiest man on the planet.
Right.
From his point of view, because he's already said in the past, actually his children have said, most of their money anyway comes from Russia. He'll just basically be going home.
Wow. What do you think, Michael?
I honestly think he's going to die before he sees any jail time.
Yeah,
There's a possibility of that. He looks like shit.
He doesn't. He's part of that is because they don't doll him up every day, with an hour and a half of makeup and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
But it is kind of surprising that he's allowed himself to be out where he knows there's going to be paparazzi camera people taking his picture when he knows he must look like shit, right? Or maybe he just can't see that when he looks in the mirror because he's so narcissistic.
Maybe.
But I mean, there's some seriously bad pictures of him out there now,
Yeah. In the last couple of weeks. Yeah. He looks, a couple of them, he looks like he's about to drop dead.
So what do you all think about this proposition? Is it impossible for Trump, and almost by extension, any president really, is it impossible for them to get a fair trial because everyone in the country has an opinion about the president? How could you get an unbiased jury for any president, really, but Trump in particular?
Well, I don't think an unbiased jury exists for almost anything, period.
That's an interesting take, Raven. Please explain.
Everybody has opinions on something, on everything.
Well, I kind of think that it's an interesting thing about even seeking an unbiased jury because you obviously don't want the jury biased for the state or against the state per se. But at the same time, that you should be able to hopefully want to rely on the jury to look at something dispassionately. And I think that's what they mean by unbiased. To look at evidence and say, okay, this evidence.
That's pretty difficult too, though.
It is. I agree.
So I
Well-
mean, like, let's say the person that is, being charged at that standing trial, is he's accused of being a pedo, right?
Right.
Whether or not you think he's guilty becomes irrelevant. 99.8% of the people that you're going to have in your jury pool are going to be passionately against pedophilia. So just the fact that somebody's being accused already paints the point of view of the jurist as far as guilt. You must have done something if you're being accused.
And that's not just about pedophilia. You're not wrong. I mean, that's not only just about pedophilia, but that's, I guess, an extreme example to show the point, right? Because you're not wrong. And a lot of people think, well, he must have done something wrong because he's here, and they say they've got the evidence. And a lot of people are, like, in my opinion, when it comes to that, sometimes too trusting of the state. I might be biased in the wrong direction, you see, because I might be biased, and you better have an airtight, solid, perfect fucking case for me to go, yeah, beyond a reasonable doubt. So maybe I would be like,
you're who the defense wants.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm that guy. I'm like, you better be able to fucking prove it, because if you can't prove it,
you need Michael Jackson money to get out of that. I actually was going to say that not really, and that you're wrong that Trump has it. But actually, when Michael Jackson died, he was broke. He didn't have a whole lot of money. There's like the Michael Jackson estate is like nothing. Everything had to be sold. And yeah, that's about what Trump has too. So Trump isn't as rich as everybody thinks he is.
Well, I mean, maybe that was true in 2015. How true do you think it is now? He's fundraised like literally hundreds of millions of dollars.
That's true.
And
that's a good point. But he also has
what we know about.
He has
a $2 billion contract with Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, but he has legal bills coming out of his ears now, though. Not that he pays his lawyers.
There's a difference between having bills and paying bills when it comes to Trump. Trump's literally got this business strategy to say, basically, fuck you, I'm not going to pay. Take me to court, and when we go to court, I'll offer you 60 cents on the dollar, and you're going to be forced to take it because that's the best you're going to get.
Yep. And
it's like he's done it so many times, it has to be a business model to him.
Mm-hmm.
I fear that although this isn't stuff that a lot of people like to bring up in any sort of recorded digital way, I fear that if we can't get justice while he's alive, and that he could just keep extending out this thing when we all saw it happen, right?
Yeah.
If he could go the rest of his life without seeing justice, it's going to embolden people to not trust the justice system to get them justice next time.
Right.
Well, the saw cuts in different directions for that as well, because, I mean, I don't think this way anymore, but as a younger man, my attitude was, well, if they're not going to follow the fucking rules, why the fuck should I? And so there's I know there will be other people out there with that kind of mentality. I mean, I used to have that mentality myself. And I think it's a certain logic to a certain level of understanding. There's a certain logic to that. You're like, why should I fucking follow the rules when the people who make the rules don't even fucking follow them?
And if you do, you're handicapping yourself because you're the only one following them.
Right. That's how it feels. Yeah, and that's why people throw their hands up and go, you know what, screw it. I'm going to go ahead and whatever.
Vegas said that she's nervous that it'll tear their country apart. Not that it should matter, and she's right. It shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter, but there is a reality there that there is a small number, a minority, of very loud, very dangerous people. When
I was a kid, the Nazis were going to do their march in somewhere in Illinois. I can't remember the exact town name, but and there was a whole big discussion about whether they should be allowed to do it. And they obviously were allowed to do it, but there wasn't a whole lot of press coverage of it because it didn't want to elevate what, 50 or 60 people were doing as some kind of event because it's 50 or 60 people. It wasn't a movement, and they didn't want to accidentally create a movement by giving it more air. Right. is that censorship, or was that just judicious editorialism? You know what I mean? I'm not sure, because I don't think they're not owed a platform, right? But at the same time, and I also think there is an argument for you give them too much oxygen, and I mean, Michael, you've paid some attention to things like 4chan in the past, right? And you see how these things sort of snowball, don't you?
I believe Vegas would say that in Trump, 4chan got their president.
Wow.
So, I mean, it depends on when you ask the question. If you're asking the question now, whether or not that's censorship, I would say most people would say yeah. But I mean, in the past, no, that would just be judicial use of airtime.
Yeah.
I mean, is it worth elevating them, like you said,
Yeah.
this minority of people, or
Well,
today?
and if you're going to do it for them, why aren't you doing it for the 60 or 70 people that are marching to fucking make sure that you can't accidentally get dolphins killed in tuna nets or whatever the fuck, right? I mean, it's the same number of people. It's a tiny little group of people who have their passion, but you're not going to give them airtime either, because it's not like a national movement. That's what you mean. That's what I think I meant by when I said sort of judicial
I've
use.
been a part of two national movements, both Ron Paul and Bernie Sanders, that when they were in their beginnings were very frustrated that they weren't getting any airtime.
Right.
Yep.
And I can't speak for the Ron Paul aspect, because obviously I was abroad. I was abroad for Bernie Sanders as well, but it was perfectly obvious in 2016. I mean, because I came out in November of 2015, and I was talking to one of my friends here in California who's a very successful man. And he had barely even heard of Bernie Sanders, and the primary was like 6 weeks away or 8 weeks away or whatever. He barely even heard the name. And he said, "Oh, is he that socialist guy?" And but he didn't have it really. He was like, he knew he was old and knew he was a socialist guy, and so he couldn't vote for that because of that reason. And he couldn't vote for Hillary because he hated Hillary, so he was going to end up voting for Trump. And this was 2015. And I'm like, Lance, man, what? No, think about what you're doing. And he bought the whole thing hook, line, and sinker in 2015. It's like, maybe it'd be good to have a businessman as president. Maybe that's what we need, is someone who, runs a business and isn't a politician, so isn't tainted by all the political corruption. I mean, he was a smart guy, and he still bought into all that bullshit.
I disagree with the stance that maybe it'd be good to have a businessman president, but Trump wasn't even that.
Right. Yeah. So it's just, it kind of blows me away, because it goes back to the point I make all the time on this broadcast. I mean, people will believe whatever the fuck they want to believe, and almost regardless of any evidence to the contrary. And that's true for whether people believe in God or whether people believe their partner is being faithful or whatever they might believe. If they're determined to believe it, there's no way you can talk them out of it,
Yeah. I've seen it happen. I've seen people change, but it hurts. It hurts your head.
I've
It's a long process.
So I am on the goddamn podcast now. I am a co-host, which is pretty cool. I have a couple of ideas of why suddenly, I'm cool enough and with it enough to be a co-host on the goddamn podcast. I don't know if it has anything. I have no idea why. But suddenly they wanted me on there, so now I'm on, and that's cool. It's a good time. Well, the other night I had a Raven's Nest broadcast, and they did a simulcast on the goddamn podcast. So I was on the two channels at once. And on the goddamn podcast chat, there was a YouTuber that's been around forever. I'm not going to say his name, but I mean, he's been in my chats and stuff all the way back to blog TV and all that. He's been around forever. Always on good terms, a little bit trollish, but we were always on good terms. And he was spewing the Trump, the whole Trump line, and then he was N-word and talking about Jews, and it's just like, what happened? What happened to you? You know, it was just really bizarre. And he's a moderator, so I couldn't kick him. But I was just like, if this was like in my chat, I'd kick you the fuck out because this is insanity, you know. And then there was somebody else in the chat was talking about monkeypox, and this person was saying about, oh, you notice it's only gay men that get it. You don't see bi men or women getting it. And somebody else said, yeah, well, there's dogs and children have been, you know, recorded having it too. And he said, what does that tell you? And I was like, whoa, holy shit. Dude calling gay guys,
Whoa.
calling them pedos. I mean, that's what he did.
And doggy humpers.
Yeah, well, it's also his kids in that, you know. But I mean, that's in essence, that's what he said. And I was like, dude, you've been following me for years. What is this nonsense? Where is this coming from? But I mean, he's all about Trump, and he's all about, you know, he has an email chain he was sharing with everybody, trying to prove that the CDC is in cahoots with Facebook to censor people and violate their First Amendment. Like, dude, this email chain doesn't say what you say it does. The fuck is wrong with you? What happened? But I mean, it's just like I've seen so many people over the last 6 years become like completely brainwashed by the Trump ideology. It's yes, a lot like Robert Wallace. Yes. And it's just really disturbing.
It seems to me circumstantially evident anyway that it's a matter of going from one door to the next door to the next door, and you don't realize that you've turned a corner because you're just going from one door to the next door, and before you know it, you're in this space of all these, you know, they've led you to a place that might not even be natural for you, but because they've taken you successfully one step at a time, I think that's what happens to a lot of people. I don't think that anybody flips like that overnight. You know what I mean? I think there's
No, I
like
agree.
a series of conversations that happen where they agree, and I think it started off with all that on YouTube anyway, with all the sort of anti-feminist rhetoric that was going on in sort of 2013, 2014, and things just went south from there.
It's really weird. It's just I've seen so many people over the last several years that went down that road, and it's really scary because it doesn't make any sense.
Michael, are you gonna say something? Oh, okay. I was gonna say, so related, but not the same exact topic. So I've been enjoying She-Hulk on Disney, right?
Me too.
And I really enjoyed the first episode, particularly. And so I went onto the Twitter, which is of course the arbiter of what's right, wrong, and good in the world, right? And I knew there'd be a lot of conversation about it, and sure enough, it was all over my feed. And I just made a random comment that said, you know, I just watched the first episode of She-Hulk. I said, I hope it lives up to its potential. You know, that's pretty banal as far as recommendations go, right? And but I had some guy jump on me saying, you know, it's all these feminists. It's too bad they had to make the lead character some sort of feminist stereotype and blah 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 blah. And I'm thinking to myself, I know what they're talking about in terms of the script that, you know, there's a little speech about why she can control her anger, right? But frankly, if you didn't spend too much time in toxic internet realms, nothing about what she said would have raised an eyebrow, because you do hear people say that kind of thing all the time.
All the time.
There's nothing out of the ordinary about what she said, other than the fact that she said it so concisely, and most people aren't that succinct, right? But yeah.
She-Hulk. Watched all of it. I'm enjoying it. Some of the effects are hokey, and it's a shame because I mean it's Marvel. It's fucking Disney, for Christ's sake.
Maybe it would be better on a big screen. I don't know. You do have a pretty big screen, actually.
It's yeah, we have a pretty big screen. It's pretty hokey. You know, when she's the Hulk and she's moving around, it's kind of like almost stop motion, kind of. Her size isn't consistent with the background. It's like really simple stuff that there's no way Disney can excuse. It's no excuse for this other than we just don't feel like spending money on our series. Some of the other series have similar problems where it's just like, like some of the effects in Obi-Wan was just like, come on, it's Star Wars for fuck's sake.
Yeah, right. You're supposed to have all the money of God. What the hell?
Yeah, and the fucking money. So that kind of stuff. Script wise, I thought it was pretty good. Breaking the fourth wall. There was that was stolen from Deadpool. Yeah, but no, She-Hulk is older than Deadpool. She-Hulk in the comics broke the fourth wall, and she was around before Deadpool was. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, if anything, Deadpool stole from her. Then they're like, oh, she emasculated the Hulk. What? No, it's just ridiculous. I've never seen such fragile men before. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Well, I mean, I commented on a post that Joe made. A woman made a comment about She-Hulk, and I'm like, yeah. The thing is about it, if She-Hulk just like, turned Hulkish and bashed it around a bit, and she had some really generous cleavage that she was sporting because she ripped through her clothes so well, these guys wouldn't have a problem, and yet that would be deserving of criticism, right? If she had no brains or ambition and just turned angry and bashed shit around and maybe saved a few people, but it was just whatever. That was what they seemed to want, and yet that would be awful.
They had scientific reasons. I mean, obviously not real scientific reasons because it's but I mean they had reasons built into the script why she didn't have the whole savage thing where she skipped that.
Right.
It was written into the script to explain it. Good enough for me. I mean, it's not like if they hadn't explained it, then I would be questioning that too. Why isn't she like She-Hulk smash? That doesn't make any sense. But they explained it. Okay, that works. That's good.
Yeah. I thought I haven't watched a third episode because right now I'm binge watching the Orville, and
So good.
Oh man.
So the whole thing or season 3?
I wanted to start on season 3, but I thought, no, I'm going to treat myself and start back over from the beginning and watch the whole thing through as if I'm watching one movie.
Where are you now?
I've knocked out like 4 or 5 episodes a day. So I watched the first 2 series in like 4 days. And now I'm like 5 or 6 episodes, maybe 7 episodes even into the third series. So that, I'm 3/4 of the way through the third series now, I guess.
Oh, okay. So season 3 is fantastic.
It's mind blowing. I'm right in the middle. I'm going to have to start it over at the beginning because things happened when I was trying to watch it. I mean, like, I'm right in the middle of the episode where Topa goes to the planet of female Mocklin, and Havina asks her to be a spy, basically, or I guess not a spy, but more of a covert assistant,
right?
And so I don't know how that's going to play out yet, but.
I won't say anything. So you saw Clyden leave, right?
I saw what?
Clyden leave?
Yeah.
Bad Clyden. Clyden's a piece of shit.
Yeah. Yeah. And the interesting thing about Clyden leaving is because, it was written in that Clyden was born female himself. So you would think that he would have at least some kind of potential to understand, but apparently not. He's too indoctrinated,
Yeah. Green Machine. It's not still good. It's better. It's still funny. It just isn't as funny. They toned down.
I actually think it benefits from not being a joke every couple of lines. You know what I mean? I think it actually benefits from having humor in it. Unlike, Star Trek tried to be funny sometimes, like Voyager, for example, but they never, none of them are actually funny people. So, it didn't always land, but on the Orville, it always lands. And this is the thing I like about the Orville. I haven't seen what I personally would call a dud episode, although the weakest episode I have seen is the Alien ripoff one, where it's they get the parasites and they change into a different being. That's kind of very alien-ish. But at the same time, I thought it was a great episode. But if there's a weak episode that I've seen, I would point to that one. What do you reckon is the weakest episode?
I don't know.
Don't think there is one.
In season 3, there aren't any.
Right. What about the other 2 seasons?
It's been so long since I watched them, I don't remember them.
All right. Yeah.
The one with Rob Lowe.
The one what?
One with Rob Lowe.
I haven't seen that one yet.
Oh, it's season 1, season 2. It's an old one.
Oh, I don't remember Rob Lowe being in it.
Yeah,
That must have gone right past me. Yeah.
that one's kind of. But I mean, all of season 3. If the weakest one in season 3, I guess, was the time travel one. And that one you saw already.
Right. Yeah, the one where they had to go back to get Gordon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Michael, do you watch the Orville?
No,
Oh, man, you're missing out.
season 3. Season 3.
Well, I spent a good portion of my life just working on some goals, and so I have to catch up with a lot of things like the entire Marvel universe.
Well, there's
But
Marvel,
I
so-
saw ads for She-Hulk, and I was wondering if maybe if I went back and I watched Shrek 2, am I going to get a boner for Fiona now? That's. I think they should sue because that's Fiona.
Oh, right. Now I'm just going to put this up because this is kind of an amusing comment I just noticed. She says, "Oh, guys, can't you see how it's just because of things like She-Hulk that our society is degenerating? I merely had to see the poster and I got transed. She-Hulk transed. Wow. I haven't seen the poster. I just watched the show, so I guess I'm safe."
I'm disappointed that I'm not the one that transed you.
Yeah.
I already shared it with Raven, but they actually bought 1877 She-Hulk. It's live and works.
I did not call it yet. I'm sorry.
Well, I shared it with you,
Yes.
but just because they have it on their poster, they decided, that would be fucked up if that was somebody else's number. So they bought the number and turned it into part of the show, so that nobody else would have to be inconvenienced by the fact that their number was 877 She-Hulk.
I have to say, Vegas mentions there's a disappointing amount of Nine Inch Nails concert bragging going on. I've never seen Nine Inch Nails, so I'm not in a position to brag. I would love to see Nine Inch Nails.
I just saw them for the second time in my life. It was very good. And it was at Red Rocks, which is, a very memorable venue to see any band.
Sure.
So,
Was it a good light show?
Yes, and there was a lightning storm at the same time.
Oh, wow.
So I got to appreciate both the regular light show and the lightning storm.
So they had cooperation from God.
Yeah.
God must like Nine Inch Nails in that case, right? To make the show that much more exciting and electric.
Well, I feel like it offset the fact that I wasn't chemically augmented at the same time, like other people might have been, which helps with the light show, I've heard. But I got lightning.
Yeah. Chemically augmented. I like that. You just remind me of something. Keep talking amongst yourselves. I'll just be right back.
I think he bought half of his T-shirts when he was chemically augmented.
He's going to go get chemically augmented right now.
All I had to do was say chemically augmented.
Yeah.
Okay, so excuse me, friends. I'm going to scoot you over momentarily for a second. Is this the one?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's the one. Okay, check this out. Unfortunately, because of our electric world now, you don't really get stuff like this very often anymore. But here's a concert ticket for going to see Prince in London.
Ooh.
Yeah, let's see what else I got here. This is from 1991. Yes.
Bauhaus.
Bauhaus. Like the original goth band, Bauhaus.
Yeah.
What's this? Sleeping with Sirens, because I was a screamo lover for a short period of time. Rush. Another Prince one. What's this one? Earth, Wind, and Fire. I mean, this is serious bragging rights. I mean, I know I haven't seen Nine Inch Nails, but I mean, I've got some very good concert tickets here that should make anyone envious. What's this one? Well, it looks like a movie theater. What the hell? What's this one? Oh, yeah, look. Purple Rain Tour, Prince and Sheila E. Wear Purple. That's pretty cool. Another Rush one, Jim Jeffries. More Yes. I've seen Yes a lot of times. U2.
You said
1985.
you said you were a Screamo fan for a little while.
Yeah,
If I drop a link in the private chat, can you show it on your?
I sure will. Yeah.
Okay, it's a video.
Okay.
It's don't have to worry about copyright. It's not going to be that won't be an issue.
Well, I don't know how to show it on the screen.
You don't know how to share your screen?
I mean, I don't know how to put a video onto the screen unless it's already in my computer's memory. I know how to put videos that are on my computer's memory on the screen.
Gotcha. Well, there it is anyway.
But I don't know how to do a link. But I still will post the link for people to, on publicly. So what do? I go like that, and then I have to copy it. Devin. Hang on a second. Mute that for a second. So I'll copy that. Pause that. I'll come back and watch that myself after the show. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the link for everyone to enjoy down here in the chat. And then if that's not enough, I'll also put it on the screen for people watching after the fact. They can't click the screen. I'm not sure if they can or not to get the link, but at least they can copy it from there. And that should be enough time. So there we go. And Deep Ashtray says he has Yes and Led Zeppelin from 1976. Yeah, that must be pretty cool, man. I was just a little bit too young to be allowed to go see Led Zeppelin when Led Zeppelin was still cool. And then when I was old enough to go, the drummer died. So, oh yeah, An Evening with Styx. I was a huge Styx fan when I was young, unashamedly so. I actually think Styx was one of the sort of better bands of the late 70s and early 80s in America. They had a great show too. And when they did the last concert I saw was the Mr. Roboto tour, and it was a total rock opera. They had like costume changes, and they were acting, and it was like little sketches and stuff and film stuff going on to sort of fill in a story. It was fucking fantastic. I saw that 3 times, once from the very front row. And that was the very first time I ever had a front row seat. Have you guys ever been to a concert and had a front row seat?
Yes.
What for, Mike?
A whole day at the Bumbershoot Festival, and
What? Speak up.
a whole day at the Bumbershoot Festival.
I can't hear you.
For seats.
Raven, can you hear him?
Mm-hmm.
I can't hear him.
Wow.
What's going on?
I don't know what's going on.
Raven, I can't hear you either. Hang on.
I can hear Raven.
Something's wrong.
Paul broke.
Who's on third? What's on first?
I don't know what's going on. I'm going to try muting and unmuting.
What?
Unmute.
What?
Mute,
What?
Unmute.
What?
Say something. Anything.
Something. Anything.
No. I'm going to leave and come back. And hopefully that'll fix it.
Are you going to leave and come back?
Yeah, I'm going to leave and come back. I'm going to leave and come back. Okay. Back in a second. Fuck's sake.
I wonder if Paul's coming back.
I just texted Paul the one Prince related thing that I do own.
Uh-huh.
It is a bag of raspberry puree, the kind you find in a secondhand store.
Yeah. All right. A bag of raspberry puree. Hi.
I've got it sorted. Sorry about that, everybody.
Sorry.
It's okay. We were just telling Prince jokes. Very bad Prince jokes.
Wow. I was such a huge Prince fan. Obviously, everybody knows that. And one of the
That's why we got to tell them while you're gone.
well, when Prince died, the when it was first announced, my fucking phone lit up, and I have to say that it shouldn't be this way, but I was quite flattered that so many of my friends associated me with Prince in their head. And like people were like genuinely worried that I was going to be like, super bereft. And I was, to be honest, I was. I took the next day off work because I couldn't fucking think about anything else. And yeah, I had one friend, like literally within 5 minutes of it being announced publicly, my phone rang 4 times in a row. And one of my friends who called, she was at base camp at Mount Everest. And she found out by looking at her news feed that Prince had died. And she called me from there. Like, are you okay? I'm like, where are you? She's like, I'm on Mount Everest. I'm like, wow, modern technology, what a thing, But yeah.
So I've never saved any of my concert stubs. I should say neither of my concert stubs.
Oh, right.
So I've only been to like 2.
Wow. When I was young, going to concerts was like the main thing.
Before the digital age, I saved all my ticket stubs, but at the point where you start saving them on your cell phone and then you just scan your phone to get in, that's when I started losing track of everything that I'd been to.
Well, there's a whole generation of people like that now who, even before you had it on your phone, they would send you an email or whatever with a QR code or whatever on it, and that would be your thing.
Yeah.
And
anyone can print that out.
That's not worth saving. You know what I mean?
No, anyone can print it.
Yeah, that doesn't have like the band's name or anything like that on it, That's another one.
Well, some of my tickets had the band's name, but anyone could print it.
Right.
So
after the fact.
In 1989 or 90, I saw Guns N' Roses and Soundgarden at Madison Square Garden.
Wow. I'm actually wowing for Soundgarden, by the way, but just so you know, not that I don't like Guns N' Roses, but Soundgarden is wow.
Yeah, well, they were just, nobody had ever heard of them. And everybody's like, wow, these guys are really weird. But they were good. And then I saw, in like 2006, I think, I saw Bon Jovi at Continental Airlines Arena. That's it. Those are the concerts I went to.
Bon Jovi's from New Jersey too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was the coming home concert. Christmas time.
Yeah, I'll bet you there was love in the air. There's lots of the girlies, certainly in the 80s when I used to be on the radio, the girls would go fucking crazy for John Bon Jovi in a way that I've hardly ever seen.
They still do.
Do they?
Yeah.
Yeah, not surprising. He's a handsome guy for sure.
Yeah. I mean, he's getting old, but yeah.
Sure. Well, I mean, we used to joke about it back in like 1986 when Slippery When Wet was like at the top of the charts and whatever. And I mean, John Bon Jovi's hair must have taken 3 hours to style, right? Because he had this feathered thing going on that you cannot get up and walk out of the house without some serious effort to look like that.
Right. I think both of his parents, were hairdressers.
That's only too ironic.
And when he wanted to grow his hair long, they were like, okay, fine, you can grow your hair, but we're going to style it so it looks good. And he had epic hair, so.
Well, it worked. I mean, his hair is like legendary. So. Mine was once upon a time. You'd hardly believe it, but yeah. The worst part is, man, when I was like going through all those phases in my life where I changed my image every like 3 months, I don't have any pictures of any of it. Same with all my hot rods. I had some seriously cool cars back in the day, but I just wasn't a picture taking kind of guy. It wasn't that we didn't have that mentality back then to take a picture of everything. You take a picture when you go on holiday. That's about it. Or you take a picture when you graduate from high school or whatever. You don't just like take pictures of random stuff, because it costs money to develop them and it takes forever, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
Like literally on my camera, a roll of film might have from the first picture to the last picture might be 3 or 4 years, of me just waiting to fill the roll up and then taking it for developing. So, I don't really have those pictures anymore. I moved around so goddamn much,
A few years before digital cameras showed up, a camera was released by Kodak called the Kodak disc. Do you remember the Kodak disc?
I don't think I ever heard of it.
Really small, very, very thin, very small. And the film was a round circular disc. But it was film.
Right.
So the way it was set up is you could take pictures really, really fast, like a digital camera. And every time you took a picture, the disc would spin to the next
Like
one.
a Viewmaster.
Yeah, almost like that. So it was a really cool camera. And I was in my teens when that came out. So I had gotten one for Christmas and I was taking pictures of fucking everything. Because it was just like, I took a picture of myself, taking a picture of myself in the mirror. So it was like that kind of a thing. And a couple of years later, the digital age was upon us, and it was just like kind of tossed that and got a digital camera.
I just want to bring attention to a comment from Autumn here. She says, I'm getting a nose stud.
I saw that. I was going to comment on it.
Well, that is an interesting choice. Obviously, I am very supportive of body piercing, as I was a body piercer for 14 years. And I still, even after taking most of my piercings out, I still have, 15 or 16 piercings or whatever, So
I was going to ask if the punctuation was correct in that sentence. I thought maybe it was more like, I'm getting a nose stud.
Right. No, I think nose studs, in my opinion, suit almost everybody. There's some face shapes they don't really suit, but most people I think look cool with the nose stud, and that includes fellas. I think I don't have my nose pierced because my fucking proboscis is so goddamn enormous. I don't want to bring more attention to it.
I thought about getting a nose piercing. I don't know. I saw that it takes like months to heal. I was like, oh, fuck that.
Well, I mean, if you get a nose piercing done with a needle and not a piercing gun, then they will heal much quicker, like within 3 to 6 weeks, But if you have someone who just goes, oh, yeah, I'll do that for you, click. Yeah, that's not going to work out for you very well. And they swell up like crazy because of that. And they might not heal properly because of that. And it's just not fun. And either way, if you get your nose pierced, you need to expect it's a piercing. So it's going to weep for a while and it's going to be red for a while. And, you've deliberately injured yourself. So expect it for when people expect a piercing to look brand, like it's been there for a year when it just got done. I find amusing, Yeah. Hi, Galen. How you doing?
Hello. I'm here at the Old Farts Club.
Yeah, you're here at the Old Farts Club. Are you the youngest member of the group right now?
I don't know. I mean, what's the age of everybody here?
Well, I'm 60, so I'm definitely the oldest.
You can't be 60.
I am, though.
You have more energy than I do. Shit.
Thank you.
You make me feel old.
Wow. Well, thanks. I will take the compliment for what it is. Thank you.
I got to do better.
Yeah. Michael, are you younger than Raven?
Maybe. Parts of Raven, yes.
And so, Galen, when you were born, who was president?
Gerald Ford.
Okay, yeah. So you're probably the baby of the bunch then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, Michael's the youngest, I think. I'm 51.
Carter and the Peanut Farm.
Wow.
Yeah. One of these days when I get back to having my own place and time, I'm going to get back to doing the interviews because I had to cut the interviews off to come out here and do this, And this is working out okay, but unfortunately the shows don't get to last very long because I just don't have that kind of spare time, But right now I'm very lucky because my son is here visiting from the UK, which means that I haven't got mom peeking her head through the door going, I need you, so that's cool. I'm very entertained by my kid at the moment. Yeah. Are you still looking after your parents, Galen?
Yeah.
How's that going?
It's going well. I mean, it's just my mother. It's just it's an ongoing thing. My dad's doing better. I have to go see him this week, and then I have like all these insurance issues that are just, I have to sue to get back medical costs because it's like something like it out of what you would see in the movie The Rainmaker, where they do insurance fraud and they owe a lot of money, and then they claim like, well, we got rid of your account 2 years ago. It's like, wow, like then why do I have all this paperwork and all these conversations?
Right.
It's like, I mean, they're like deny, and claiming every stupid thing possible. But it's when you have money and you're supposed to get it, and you have medical costs, it's with medical insurance. It's stuff with the insurance and medical bills, and I owe bills on medical bills. They pile up.
Right.
So
when I was in my last relationship, my partner had some serious issues with her medical insurance, and basically she met her deductible in the first 5 weeks of the year, so they kicked her off and told her she needed to get a different plan, which is obviously illegal. And long story short, they screwed us around for literally months. And then I looked into like, there's got to be some kind of consumer protection for this sort of thing. And in Colorado, there's a whole division of consumer protection which deals specifically with people who are getting screwed by insurance companies. So maybe they have the same thing in your part of the country, Galen. Have you looked into any consumer protection agency assistance? Because just the threat of that was enough to get them to pull their finger out for my gal. So,
yeah, I've had a lot of problem with my own medical insurance. I mean, this thing deals with cost of bills already paid, and then reimbursements with this long plan, and then I have the other medical insurance, because what it's called, I call it like discriminatory insurance. So the insurance that I do have, whatever I do, they look at how much they have to pay, and then they don't give me the right care because they try to screw around and not give it to me. Because it's literally discriminatory. Like, it's like they look at people. So it's not like you can like, well, I'll pay the rest of this. They're like, no, fuck you. I mean, literally, I've been told, fuck you, that we will not accept it. They even told me, a doctor told me last year, could I get surgeries and get better after having debilitating nerve pain and all this, and it would lead to death otherwise? Yes, we can do this, and it would not be a big deal. But you're not on this plan, so you just need to die in pain. Literally told me that. Literally, wow. It was like, you can do this. We will give you painkillers, and you could get addicted to this, and give you all this stuff. And like, are you going to get with your drug reps and make money? And they were like, well, that's beside the point. Like, the person fully admitted to everything, and they didn't care. And they're like, if you don't like that, well, you could just not have any care, and you could die anyway. So you could either take the phone I'm giving you, or you can like leave.
I think it's awful, because in the system over here, I mean, this kind of story is way too common. And what really gets me about it in this country, I mean, when I lived in Britain, when there was like the National Health Service, and where doctors might run you around or tell you that nothing's wrong when you're sure there's something wrong, it's a little bit more understandable over there in this sense, because obviously they're swamped and they can't necessarily spend the kind of time on everybody that they might like to spend, because they're swamped, because it's free. So there's a lot of use, right, of the healthcare system. But here, they're going to get paid. So why don't they do the fucking most expensive thing they can for you, which is fix you, right? It just doesn't make any sense, because they're going to get paid. And I don't understand. I mean, I understand why the insurance companies try to screw you, but what I don't get is why the healthcare professionals tell you, no, you won't be able to do this.
I'll tell you why.
Go, please enlighten me, because I don't really get how it works over here. I've been confused for 2 years.
So here's part of the issue. So because the insurance companies have negotiated pricing for various procedures, and that negotiated value is less than what they would charge you, because you have no bargaining power. So this happened to me. I got in a car accident, and I went, and I was having some pain, and I went for they sent me for physical therapy. So the bill from the doctor's office was like $700, but since insurance was paying, I had like a $250 deductible. So the bill got negotiated down to $250.02. Because of course the insurance company's not going to kvetch over two. They're not going to argue. And they're going to fight over 2 cents. It would cost them more, as it is. It costs them more than 2 cents to send out the damn check. So,
right.
So they didn't. So they just let it go. But the thing is, and actually on the bill, about half the items on the bill they didn't actually do. So I actually originally refused to pay, and I paid the part that they actually did. But then they actually sent me to collection, and they were going to like get a judgment against me. But I've talked to some people about that. I had a friend who used to work in insurance. He said, yeah, that's what it comes down to, is that, they'll charge, and basically what it comes down to is because the insurance company will go after them if they overcharge, they'd actually rather overcharge you and because they can charge you whatever the fuck they want.
Wow. So it just seems to me kind of obvious, and I know this is because it's so obvious. I'm obviously really late to the party, but I mean the rules aren't in the benefit of the consumers here at all. The rules are here to benefit the corporation. First of all, I think the insurance companies, and after that, the healthcare providers, and I think the consumer or the patient, it comes last in the whole calculation.
Yeah.
The point is not to make sick people well. It's to make money, and it's irrelevant if those people suffer or die. It's utterly irrelevant. They do not care. They train doctors not to care or listen. Just, it's a job. It's just like a bureaucracy. Go through the motions, make your money. It's a racket, and that is unfortunate.
Chris Rock had a routine about this, and he said basically they don't cure shit. The idea is, obviously they don't want you to die because they want you to be alive long enough to keep charging you money. So basically they want to get it to where you can live with it.
Right.
So that you become a revenue stream. And this is what pisses me off, because the people that are against, universal health care in our country, they're right wingers, and they're like, oh, the cost. We spend more than double what all the other developed nations do on healthcare. So this idea that we can't afford it is complete horseshit. We spend more money for worse outcomes.
That's an objective fact. And what I've said, I know I've said this before, so I apologize for sounding like a broken record. But I mean, like, when they set up the NHS in 1948 or whatever it was, 49 in Britain, the country was fucking smashed. I can't even remember what percentage, but every town and village lost menfolk in the war. Every town and village, not an exaggeration. The country was fucked. Lots of cities got bombed, and yet they still found the willpower and the money somehow to come up with a new system. So I don't buy it when the people say we can't afford it, even if it was equal to the cost now, but better in terms of the way it was applied, because you don't have to jump through the hoops of insurance. Because all this insurance business over here, it triple overcomplicates everything.
It was an absolute requirement to the health of the populace to do what they did. However, when you hear people today in America say they can't pay, the same people have no issue giving billions, even trillions, to corporate welfare and the military-industrial complex, and they don't look at who's being bombed. Well, look at the civilian deaths at any American military exercise, and it's an astounding human rights crime. And Americans look the other way because Americans of all political persuasions are utterly bigoted with American exceptionalism. It's like a blinding thing across our eyes that we ignore. It's foolish. It's disgusting. And, it's just one of the horrors of being an American.
Guilty.
Yeah. Guilty.
I know it.
Yeah, I mean and the thing that gets me about it is, we've also been scared into thinking that we have to spend anywhere near what we spend. We spend more than what the next 13 countries combined, and all of two, except for two, are allies. And even it was like Russia. Russia's defense budget is less than a tenth of ours, less than 10%.
Well, I mean, their entire economy is the size of Italy's.
Right. Right. If they didn't have nuclear weapons, they would be because they would be completely ignored. So this idea that we might get a war with Russia. Well, Russia can't knock over the next door neighbor. This idea that they're this global world power that we should be cowering in fear and throw our money down a bottomless pit has been laid bare for anyone who's paying attention.
It's 6 months now, right? We're like 6 months into this now.
192 days.
Who the fuck thought it would go this long? I mean, other than Joe, he pays attention to shit. I mean, like most everyone else.
Yeah. Well, I got into an argument with a guy about a year ago, who was like a guy I know from like the other games I play, and it turns out this he's basically he's a cold warrior, but it turns out he works at defense. He actually is a civilian contractor with the Defense Department, and he's actually an analyst. And I'm like, are you out of your fucking mind? Because this guy was like, oh, Russia could do this, and they could overrun Europe in like a month, and all this. And I'm looking at the numbers, and I'm thinking, well, okay, maybe he's privy to numbers that I'm not aware of, right? Maybe he knows something I don't know. That's a possibility. So I said, all right, well, maybe my sources are bad. Can you tell me what where are you getting your numbers so I can compare? So he actually posted a report that he actually wrote for the DOD. And I'm looking at the numbers, and they're almost identical to the numbers I'm looking at. And I'm like, these are not run roughshod over Europe numbers by a long shot. But everyone keeps thinking of the Soviet Union, which is, of course, and most of those countries are in NATO now, or independent,
I mean, I don't think that eliminates the danger, but I think it's a bit of a storm in a teacup. I think it's in a sense, I mean, obviously the war is really happening. But some of these concerns about them running over Europe, I mean, what's in it for Russia to risk World War III? I mean, it's hyperbole. It's a storm in a teacup, if you ask me. And it's this to me, and I'm pretty sure Galen will agree with me. I mean, this is just another example of a proxy war. Instead of sending our troops over there to fight, we're just giving them billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of weapons, which serves the military industrial complex just as it would if we were sending our own troops over there to do the fighting.
It's a one-sided proxy war, yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, it is absolute. I don't mean it's a proxy war in the same way that Vietnam was or anything like that, for example. Okay.
Anything during the Cold War, right.
It's not that. But what I'm saying is we're not sending our troops, thank goodness, because we don't have to, because we're helping the country defend itself. And that's how it should be in terms of, I'd rather do that than send up troops, right?
And that's why
a thousand times over. But that's why it's a proxy war, because we're basically just expending weapons over there, but they're doing it instead of us.
So I wanted to, like Deep Ashtray said, Russia's one of the largest exporters of gas and oil, far more influential than nukes, and that's true. But they just recently basically threatened to cut Europe off, or they are cutting Europe off, and Europe said meh. So I mean, even that influence is waning. Publicly they said meh. I mean, behind closed doors, some of them might be wringing their hands, but winter is coming. Not to be all Game of Thrones about it. Winter is coming, and some of those supplies of oil and gas is needed. But yeah, publicly Europe went meh.
The thing too, the Europeans are a lot more able, being less selfish than we are as societies, to be able to just cut back on shit. I mean, we know our society isn't, because we said, hey, do you think you could wear a mask in public and people storm their capitals with guns? So, you know where we're at.
Yeah. No, Europe is in a desperate place right now. No, but publicly, Europe literally just 2 days ago publicly said, nah, seriously. I mean, that was pretty much the response. I mean, I hear you, but nah. So... And yeah, I don't know. You're having that conversation with Green Machine, so I'm not going to in there. Don't want to be like dog.
I mean, that's the thing. We've used other means of threatening people, usually economic means, but since the 50s ended, I should say, using nuclear weapons as a threat has not really been the thing. It's been more of like a if you come at us with nukes, we'll we'll flatten you to the Stone Age.
Yeah.
But,
Other than that, yeah, it's always economic. It's always we'll cut you off.
right.
You don't do what we say, we'll cut you off.
Right. Yeah, we have much better ways to manipulate people than nuking them into oblivion.
Yeah, and it works. it works typically.
There was a and one of the games I play, it's games based on the original Star Trek, and so of course the Federation is somewhat analogous to the United States, or at least the our rhetoric, right? Our advertisements for ourselves, but. So one of the things that somebody put together was this bumper sticker and says, it was like the old thing of like, I want to travel to strange and interesting lands, meet interesting people and kill them. Well, they changed to and economically exploit them. It's like that's pretty much us. Yeah,
That's it. We've had that conversation, Joe. We've had that conversation a million times. We're not Rome. We're not
Ferengi.
Yeah. Yeah. The comparison to Rome was always interesting to me. And there are certain aspects of it I see. But no, we actually probably are closer to the Ferengi.
That's pretty funny.
That's terrible.
So I'm just going to shift the conversation along a little bit here. So what did y'all think about the Dark Brandon speech the other night?
It was about time.
It's about time.
What do you think about
Poor choice of lighting. Very poor choice of lighting. It came off a little bit too much like Emperor Palpatine. Like
it has to be deliberate
seriously
as well.
That was deliberate.
Yeah, it was.
It was a good choice because that's what he wanted. That's what he wanted to express. This wasn't, warm and cozy. Now this was, business. God damn it! And then since the Dark Brandon meme had been out there, it works.
Mm.
Yeah,
it gave me the most hope that maybe they're actually going to do something.
Well, and if you think about it, if people are attacking you for something that you're not doing, might as well fucking do it.
Yeah.
Right?
That was when they went after Obama about shit and they called him a socialist. And it's just like, dude, they've given you a green light. Do it. Just do it. But
Duxilla, I have to disagree with you. Here's why. Because what the right wing is going to do has nothing to do with what the left does. It's based on the mirror nightmares in their head. And they're going to do what they want to do. This idea, that's why, like, well, if we expand the Supreme Court, then the Republicans will do it. The Republicans are going to do it anyway. I understand this. You're going to do it anyway. They don't give a fuck. They play by their own rules. And we wring our hands like, oh, we shouldn't push them and use the power we wield when we're in power because they might go out of hand. They always do. They always fucking do. When the Republicans are in power, they use those levers of power to the extent that they're able.
I'm 100% down with the suggestion that the Democrats, especially those in Congress, should flex more and exert more pressure. 1,000% down with all that. But I'm going to use something that happened to me on Twitter the other day as an example. The speech happened and only MSNBC showed it live, and the main terrestrial networks didn't show it. And of course, Fox didn't show it, or the right wing ones didn't show it live. Neither did CNN show it live. And so there was a lot of like banter about that. And one of the people that I responded to, he said that he thinks that they should have used the emergency alert system and made people watch it. And I'm like, no, brother, that's using authoritarian tactics to fight authoritarianism. You cannot do that. If you're going to stake out a claim and make that claim, plant that flag in the moral high ground, you have to maintain the moral high ground.
You cannot emulate the deeds of your adversaries.
Right.
Right. But I think there's a difference between that and what we're talking about, which is being more assertive, more stubborn. I think that's what you're sort of leaning towards, isn't it, Joe? Just
absolutely.
Just draw a line in the sand and stick to it.
Yeah. Stop worrying about oh, the other side will say this about us. They already do. They already say we're ultra radicals. And I mean, it's really funny because I know some ultra radicals, and when they say and they hate Joe Biden because he's not an ultra radical, right? So this idea that he's doing all these leftist things, fuck it, I mean, and granted, I mean, he's not going to want to do all those things because he's not a leftist, but to whatever extent he wants to do the shit, just fucking do it. And that's basically what he kind of did. With the the scale down, build back better, right? With whatever it's called now, the Inflation Recovery Act, whatever the hell it was. They said, "Fuck it, Manchin agreed." I don't know what he did behind the scenes to twist Manchin's arm.
Maybe he literally twisted his arm.
He may have, but whatever he did, it worked enough. And again, it's not everything. It's not everything we need, but it's a step in the right direction. More of that. And I was thinking about it today. The most effective president in my lifetime, I'm not going to say he's the best president, but the most effective president in my lifetime was Bill Clinton. Because even while they were investigating, even while there were congressional hearings, even all the shit was going on, he was still able to muscle the Republicans around in ways that no other Democrat has been able to do in the last 60 years.
While getting blowjobs.
And while being, deposed over the blowjobs and all this kind of stuff. And he's still even with a low approval rating, he was still able to get a lot of shit done.
Yeah, I was obviously abroad for the whole of Bill Clinton's presidency, so my entire impression of the man's presidency is over the media, and I think that's really unfortunate.
Yeah. And again, obviously, there's a lot of things that Bill Clinton did that aren't so hot.
Lied about blowjobs.
Getting the blowjobs, and potentially harassing Paula Jones. We still don't know what the truth of that was, but I mean, I can't dismiss her out of hand. Kathleen Willey and all that. There's all these different things. And I wouldn't put it past him. I mean, come on, the guy had a different problem. But but that's it. As far as just flat out getting shit done, he didn't care what they called him and what they did. He just I'm going to do this.
Yep.
And that's what the Republicans do. They don't give a fuck. I mean, we can call them hypocritical all we want because it's true, but they don't care. And I would say here, part of the problem that the left does have, though, any Democrat president has, is that unfortunately, while the right wing says shit, but they'll ignore it when their side does it, we don't. So, like, my favorite example is Al Franken, right? Al Franken didn't actually grab that woman's tits. He pretended to, and we made him quit. But they can say, "Oh, this is so terrible," but their guys couldn't fucking, hell, Trump, grab him by the pussy. What did we see? Oh, you can grab me by the pussy. So they don't care when it's their guy. They do not give a fuck, and we need to learn to not give a fuck quite so much.
I agree and don't agree, right? I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I totally get the gist, but it comes back to what I was saying before about using authoritarian tactics to solve authoritarianism. There is a line that I think needs to be observed, regardless of. I mean, I know that you do have to play tough against tough. You're not going to persuade people with cotton candy and ice cream, right? So
there is behavioral norms between both sides that are different.
Yes.
And those are a good thing. It is a good thing that the folks on the left don't condone or do the things that are on the right, and that they call it out when they do. So like Paul said, I agree and I disagree. I agree to be stronger. I agree the left needs to stick together. I agree that they need to flex their muscle when they have it.
Right.
But we don't want to start to emulate the deeds of the adversary.
No, I agree. But here's the thing. Okay, like Al Franken. Okay, he should have regardless of the fact he didn't actually touch her, he should have apologized. It's a bad look. It's a bad thing to do. Don't do it. Right.
It was a tasteless joke. I'm very sorry. If I made anybody uncomfortable, let me get back.
Say that.
Yeah, let him get back to work.
I have a job. Let me get back to work.
I mean, it just goes to show how far things have slipped in a short amount of time. Because when did that happen with Franken? Was it 2017 when he ended up having to quit?
2016, I think. But yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's definitely around about that time. And like the zeitgeist has shifted so far since then. And this is why I was so, I mean, I shouldn't be amused, but I was darkly amused, I guess, by the fact that so many Republicans, and especially for Republican talking heads, their hair went on fire when Biden said semi-fascist. And I mean, my goodness, like how many times did Trump use like overstatements? And I think he actually used the word fascist as well, for that
He
matter.
called the Democrats the enemies of the people.
Right. And the press, you know, and I mean, and, you know, Mexicans were rapists, but some are good people. And, you know, Muslims should be banned from the country. I mean, he said things that were so fucking much more outrageous, in my opinion, than semi-fascist. And a lot of people, you know, on Twitter anyway, were sort of getting their knickers in a twist because they're saying that he's calling, you know, all Republicans semi-fascist. I mean, like, if you believe that, you didn't listen to what he said. You listened to the talking heads tell you what he said, because that's not what he said, you know.
Plus the other thing too, Paul, it's kind of like, okay, not everybody who voted for Trump is racist, but they had to at least be willing to abide racism. So I don't feel bad if any Republicans who aren't fascist were insulted. I'm like, okay, well, you're not doing enough in your own party to root out fascism.
That's about what I was going to say. You know, clean up your fucking house. You know what I mean? Before you expect me to think, oh, you know, you've said this ad infinitum, Joe, but I mean, and I think both parties are corrupt as fuck, but they are not equal. They're just not, you know. Brian, how you been?
Hello. Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. It's not been a brilliant week, but it hasn't been a catastrophic week either. So I'm good.
Sorry to hear it wasn't brilliant.
Yeah.
Such is life.
I want to jump in real quick. I'm sorry. Hi, Brian. I just wanted to say to the machine that the kiss wasn't without consent. She could say that all she wants, but they were rehearsing a scene, a skit that involved a kiss.
Right.
So I'm sorry if you have a script in front of you and you're performing something for the camera and it calls for a kiss and you know that it calls for a kiss and you're about to get kissed, you can't complain when you get kissed.
Right.
Sorry. You don't want to do the job, then don't do the fucking job. Sorry.
Right.
Which kiss is this?
Al Franken, he was accused of kissing a woman without consent. Way back when.
And it was scripted?
Yeah. And yeah, it was part of a skit that they were rehearsing. She didn't like the way that it was aggressive during the kiss. So she says it was without consent, but it wasn't without consent. It was
if it was scripted, then yeah, the whole consent argument becomes moot.
Yeah, she can feel like, you know what, maybe this went, you know, a little bit rougher than I was expecting. But I mean,
like the way you kissed me is a fair comment.
Sure. It's a fair comment, but I mean, it was scripted.
Right.
So
yeah, so you can't use the consent.
Right, because you can always go to the director or producer and say, hey, you know, I really don't want to kiss Al.
Yeah.
You know,
can we remove his too mouthy? He ate my face.
You know, but that's the thing. But well, just like, well, I forget the name of the House representative on California that it was found out that she's bisexual in a 3-person relationship, and then she had to quit. I'm like, why? I don't give a fuck. You know?
All consenting adults. Nobody did anything wrong.
And again, it wasn't the right wing that made her quit. It was our side. Like, but we're in favor. Like, we're okay with bisexual people. We're okay with multiple people relationships. Why the fuck did we drum her out? I don't understand it. I mean, we make those. And now, one thing somebody said, it was Deep Ashtray, that we have to accept more moderates like Manchin. Yes and no. I guess what I would say is, and it's Manchin, not Minchin. Tim Minchin's a totally different person.
I'd be in favor of supporting Minchin.
I would support Tim Minchin anytime. But the thing is that we have to accept that we're stuck working with him. That's really what it comes down to. Like, we have to. He's there. He gets a vote, whether we like him or not. And that means that there's no progress of any kind without compromising with him, which sucks but it is the current reality. Math is math, and that's the thing. Sometimes we're like, well, we could do no. Like a lot of people on the left seem to think there's some magical thing that we can do to make the system not function, technically the way it does, and it does. So just fucking, like I said, a compromise does not have to be a dirty word, and it also doesn't have to be forever. You compromise today, get the progress, and then you push for more tomorrow, and then when you get that compromise, you push for more the next day. You don't stop.
It can be a dirty word.
It shouldn't have to be.
But it can.
Right.
That's what politics is supposed to be anyway. The art of compromise.
Right.
That's what it's designed for. I mean, you get two sides together, you discuss your issues, and you come up with something that's mutually acceptable.
I agree.
That's what it's all about.
Maybe I was brainwashed by Schoolhouse Rock, okay? But like, I honestly had this idea when I was growing up in the 70s that the way politics was supposed to work in America was, look, we need 60 votes to pass most shit. And that's very rare that you're going to have one party with that level of domination in the Senate. So you had to do a bit of give and take with the opposition. But back in the day, it wasn't like, here, I'm going to tack my amendment on your bill or whatever, and you're going to pass it. Whereas now what we have is total obstructionism. So instead of saying, hey, if you want to get in this, say, for example, highways infrastructure bill, I want to tack on this, this, and this, and then I'll vote for your highway bill. I mean, those days are gone. We don't have a Republican Party that operates in good faith, certainly in the Senate, probably in both houses, but definitely in the Senate. And it's not just Mitch McConnell, although he is the architect of this obstructionist philosophy and mentality. And I guess it's something the founders, the people who set up the Constitution, I guess, did not anticipate a party which would not care if the country prospered or not.
Mitch McConnell
if it helps us get elected next time, we'll go ahead and trash the country now. That seems to be the philosophy of Mitch McConnell.
Now, Mitch McConnell announced it when Obama was elected.
That they will. Yeah. I'm going to make sure he doesn't accomplish anything, so we'll lose the next election.
Yeah. He said we will make him a one-term president. And then when it came to the vote on healthcare, he said this will be his Waterloo. I mean, his entire strategy when Obama was elected was to bring everything to a stop, and that for sure would destroy this black man's political future. And it didn't work, and the Republican Party has not moved off of that footing since.
Right. Ever since President Blackenstein.
Yeah.
So the thing is, I wanted to address Deep Ashtray real quick. Deep said, the Dems need to have a moderate branch if they want to draw voters. I'm like, they do. That's the problem. Isn't having a moderate. That's most of the party is the moderate branch.
Democrats.
That's the Democrats. They're not a leftist party, but despite what the Republicans like to say, which is what pisses off the leftists, which is why the leftists are very apathetic about voting.
Right. Who are forced to vote for Democrats because, that's all they got. This is why ranked choice voting is the way.
Seeing as Waterloo was mentioned, at what point did Napoleon actually become a hero figure rather than?
Well, I don't think they're saying it's more the fact that he was riding high, but I hear what you're saying though. Yeah.
Yeah, I know Waterloo was his bring down. Yeah, I know. I get it, but it's like it just seems so counterintuitive that it was my Waterloo. It's like it's almost celebrating Napoleon. And it's just weird to me.
No, I mean, it was the hope that Obama failed, which is something else. Like, I hated Trump. I still hate Trump.
Oh, yeah.
I never, ever thought to myself that I hope he fails. Because as president, if he fails, we all fail.
Right.
And when Obama was elected, the right, whether they were just Republicans or libertarians or whatever they were, they openly hoped for his failure. And it was just like, that is just so completely backwards to me.
That's an interesting point, Raven, because if Trump fails, we fail as a country. That's a very astute observation, and I'm wondering just how many Americans there are that sort of found themselves in that position of shit. Trump's our president, but he's my president. It's my country, and if he fails, we fail, and America. So, yay, Trump.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
I'm just wondering if how valid that is as a
right. Well,
a course of understanding, if you know what I
well,
mean.
I think part of the problem is when people think when they okay, this person succeeds or whatever or fails, they're not thinking about it from a broad perspective. They're thinking, okay, that means that guy got their agenda forward. No, to me, because I think his agenda was regressive, so I don't want his agenda to succeed, but I wanted him to do the things that would make America better.
Right.
Making America better is obviously an ongoing project, right? But at what point, what has to happen in our society for for us to basically say, because I saw Galen said in the private chat, we've already failed. And I think it really depends on what your criteria is as to whether or not, I would agree with that call. You know what I mean? Because there's certain things about America. And I was gone for 31 years. And when I came back to America, it was more alien to me in 2020 than Britain was to me when I moved to Britain in 1989. I mean, that was the level of difference in the country that I come from, was born in and love. Right. And so I don't necessarily know that I would use the word failed, but I definitely would use the word failing. We are failing right now. We're failing on lots of levels. Criminal justice is just one of my pet peeves about what's failing over here, but there's loads of things.
It's easy to point at Ronald Reagan. And I think a lot of blame does rest there, because a lot of his economic policies, have trickled through our history over the last 40 years, have made a huge difference in the way that normal everyday Americans live their everyday lives. But honestly, what really, really changed was September 11th. September 11th was like a gash, this bloody, nasty wound that we never let heal. We never got over, and it has allowed the Christian right to rise up. The way that everyday people in this country speak about religion and about things in general has changed so drastically from when I was a kid. And everybody today sounds like a religious extremist. Every time I turn around, people are talking about God and what's in the Bible and what isn't. And it's just like these conversations were never had when I was young.
Yeah.
It kind of got pushed onto your allies as well.
Yeah, to the reach, certainly. I mean, the thing is, and I've said for a long time, Bin Laden won. He's dead, but it doesn't matter. He won because the thing about what the purpose of terrorism is, right? They want to basically destabilize a country so that it can no longer do whatever it is it does. It fails at those things. He succeeded. Because Raven's right on target. I mean, whatever we were already heading in a bad direction, and that just pushed us over a cliff. And that's why you think about it. Dennis Miller used to be a fun comedian, intelligent, funny, and now he's like a reactionary stooge.
Yeah.
Sorry, it takes me a second to unmute. There's another aspect as well. Yes, I agree. 9/11 changed a hell of a lot. It changed the world, 9/11.
Right.
But something else as well has been running concurrently with this. And this is probably more visible from our country. And that is the defunding of education.
Right.
And the defunding of health services. There are two things that a nation needs to succeed. One is an educated population. The other is a healthy population. And the only reason that I can see for governments to be defunding those services hand over fist the way they are is if they have too much population, because they've got enough population to get through whatever electoral decisions they want. Yeah. Like, who's going to be doing this? Who's going to be doing that? And I suggest that the reason politicians are okay with these defundings is because they've got the chaos. They've got the malleable electorate that they can convince with whatever bullshit they decide to spew. And that's all they need.
Before you go, Raven, I'll just add to what Brian said. And concurrently to this defunding of vital services, they've also made it more difficult to protest and given police more power. Carry on, Raven.
Agreed.
So as far as like funding healthcare and stuff, actually, I think the government funds more healthcare now than they did before. That's been something
I did say from the perspective of my country.
Right. So that's something that's been increasing over the years, because there was a time, I think we talked about this. Was it this show? I don't know. I think we might have talked about it the last time. I'm on too many
podcasts. Yeah.
But I mean, like before Reagan was president, when he was running, I think, for governor of California,
he was California's governor.
He spoke out against, Medicare and Medicaid. I mean, he was, against this socialist, government overtaking of healthcare. So, I mean, the government never really supplied or provided much healthcare to begin with. So it's actually more now than it was before. Education was always something that was easily put on the chopping block without really thinking about. But I think because of the rise of the Christian right in this country after September 11th, the kind of changes we've seen in how education is treated on the government level is actually impacted by September 11th, because there are a lot more Christians in government now that are deciding what to do with that money.
Yeah. Interesting. I'm not going to disagree that everything changed on September 11th, because that's just like self-evidently so. But I think that the bigger change, and I can't see how this sprouts out of September 11th, but I mean, in the past 40 years, the difference between the wealthiest people in America and the poorest people in America, the gap has always been bigger than most countries, but that gap has widened by like triple, now.
That's economics. That's Reagan.
Right. And this is a new phenomenon. And when I discuss like with my sons here from Britain at the moment, and we're discussing the ins and outs of capitalism, and the thing is, how it's working now is not how it always had worked. Right. And, I mean, you could argue that capitalism as a philosophy is unsustainable, full stop, and people have made that argument, but it's definitely unsustainable in its current mode. Right.
There's a graph out there, right, that shows income and cost of living and all that kind of stuff. Right. And there's a point in the mid 80s, right, where these points meet, and then they start spreading out like this. And it's because of Reaganomics. It's because of trickle down economics that Reagan put into place when he was president. And it's no matter what we've done, we've never closed that gap again.
Yeah. One thing I like to point out, though, and this is something I have to keep reminding people: Britain has a capitalist economy. Germany has a capitalist economy. The Netherlands, Belgium, Switzerland, Sweden.
Yep.
All the social democracies. It's not, capitalism is a nice scapegoat, but it has nothing to do with capitalism itself. It's how we do it. We've
changed our basically regulatory structure to the point. And laws have literally been written by corporations through their lobbyists and then promoted through their paid for representatives. Right. And this is basically the structural function of an oligarchy rather than a democracy.
Right.
That is also part of the function of corporations as persons. I can't remember what year that happened. But that is another major turning point when it comes to the dominance of capitalism in politics rather than economics. And I make that distinction because capitalism in economics, that's its proper venue. Capitalism in politics, not so much.
Right. Raven, what were you going to say?
I wanted to actually address, like Vegas said, the religious takeover of the GOP predates 9/11 by a lot. I never said otherwise. In 1985, what's his face? The old guy from the 700 Club.
Jerry Falwell?
No, from the 700 Club.
Oh, Pat Robertson.
Pat Robertson. In 1985, Pat Robertson had suggested that the United States Congress be disbanded. He felt that they got in the way of Reagan doing the thing that Reagan did or does, and that was basically be a soldier for the Christian right, which is what very much Ronald Reagan was. He was very much a Bible thumper and believed that everyone should be a Christian and blah 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 blah. And if you weren't a white straight Christian person, you weren't good. That was basically Reagan's thoughts. So in 1985, Pat Robertson wanted Congress to be disbanded. The difference between 1985 and now is that nobody took that shit seriously then.
Right.
Religious nutcases could say whatever they wanted. And the Republican Party always bent over backwards to make them happy. But as far as like having a voice in the public sphere, their voice was really relegated to their church.
Well, in fact, to add to that, one of the reasons why the right wing kind of gave up on George W. Bush is because they elected him like, oh, great evangelical president, and he didn't really do. He did some of the things they wanted, but he didn't really do a lot of the stuff they wanted religiously.
Didn't bring back prayer in schools, for example.
He didn't bring back prayer in schools. After 9/11, he praised Islam as a religion of peace. He did a lot of things that upset the evangelicals.
Exactly.
So, I mean, but after 9/11, the Dominionists, that was when they really decided it was time for them to get active. And they started running candidates for office who never once really talked about their religious affiliations until after they were elected. And right now, in every state, in every at least county, maybe not locally, but in every county, and in the federal government, our government is filled with Dominionists. Our government is effectively a Christian nationalist government at this point.
Yeah, that's a terrifying thing to contemplate, really. We talked about that either last week or the week before about Christian nationalism a little bit, and I mean, how do you unwind that, Spring?
Is that true of the Democrats who are currently in power?
What?
No.
There is still an
Raven
extension,
just said that
of a Christian nationalist movement in America. And, not to beat a dead horse too hard, but, the whole structure of America is white supremacist in the first place, right? So that's actually how it's supposed to function. So, you need to do a lot of structural changes to unwind that. You can't just...
Well, and the thing, Brian, to what Raven was saying, like, no, generally speaking, the Democrats don't fit what you're taught, what Raven was talking about. But the other thing to remember is that if you look at who controls government at the local and state and county level, there's way more Republicans than Democrats.
Okay.
Even though when you tally the votes nationwide, there's way more Democratic votes. So, like back in 2018, when the Democrats took the House, they took the House by like 10 seats, but they had 9% more Democratic votes than Republicans. It was literally like 54 to 45 or something like that. And it took that just to have 10 seats more. Now, proportionally, that should have been like 30 seats more, or 18 or not, like more 21. But still, it was like it's nowhere near what it should be because of gerrymandering and a lot of these things Raven is talking about. And this is where I get angry on the real leftists. We do have real leftists in this country. They just don't have any power. But I keep telling them, stop focusing on the president. Stop having these dream candidates every 4 or 8 years, because even if they get in, their agenda is going to go nowhere. What you need is to build a base. You need to build people at the local, state, county levels.
There's plenty of efforts of that to go on right now. I mean, that's what's hopefully going to be happening in quite a few constituencies for the November elections.
What are the issues with the leftist movement? Because I remember saying not long ago that there is no leftist and no leftist movement in the United States. And over the last few years, it's actually become untrue, that there really is a leftist movement in this country. The problem with them is their messaging typically is worse than the Democrats. which is bad.
Yeah.
which is
And the thing is, they have to remember they're about 15% of the electorate, but they think that they're 60% of the electorate, and they're not. So they get frustrated because they tend to be political novices. They're not used to electoral politics, and the thing is that again, sometimes I feel like I'm dealing with children. It's like I don't believe electoral politics alone are gonna save the nation. Right? That's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen in one election, that's for sure.
No, but without electoral politics, all the stuff that happens on the local level is meaningless.
Right.
Meaningless. So you need both. You need activist politics and you need electoral politics together as a strategy, as a fucking strategy. Because that's what we didn't have. See, here's the thing. Going back to Barry Goldwater, but Goldwater tried to be president in 1964 and he failed. He lost to Lyndon Johnson. At that point, the right wing said, we're gonna have we can't be faffing around with just random shit. We need a strategy. They've been working at this for 60 years. 60 years, because they understand in the long run, if they keep pushing the penny in their direction, they're going to win. But our side gets very, I didn't get what I wanted. It's like, plus the other problem of having a more diverse group of people, it's a lot harder because everybody's proprietary. My issues are more important than everybody else's issues, and no one's taking the broad picture. That, hey, you know what? If you add up all those little subgroups, we're like 80% of the population, right? So we should have everything.
We should have everything. So Green Machine's like Occupy wasn't leftist. It was leftist. It was centrist. There were all kinds of people that were involved in Occupy. Occupy was a reaction to something. It was the beginnings of a movement, but it wasn't really a movement. Not yet. It's just saying Occupy doesn't really mean a whole lot. It was the beginning of a leftist movement, and they've gotten a lot more centralized and a lot more focused since then. They still have messaging issues.
Yeah, Occupy should have turned into Occupy Congress.
Yes. It's easy. I mean, I did a video on this way back when about basically an autopsy on Occupy, and I think people involved in Occupy should have done an autopsy on Occupy.
Yeah,
because I think if they had, it would have informed what they did next. But whatever.
Well, now here's one thing. Actually, Brian said something in the chat. And this is something I wanted to talk to Brian about. So he's here, which is great. So, and now we're not going to have the argument today about the comparing the parties, even though you're wrong. However, one thing I was looking at it because I wanted to basically, I'm preparing for the time when we actually do have that discussion. And so one thing I was looking up is because yes, there's way more parties in House of Parliament than we ever get here, right? But I looked at it. There's 85 seats out of 650 that are not either Labor or the Tories, right? Okay. So not a big percentage. And then consider literally slightly more than half of those are actually the SNP. And then I looked at the other ones. Most of them are nationalist is the wrong word. I'm going to say it in the European sense, not the American sense. But basically, you have the Northern Ireland parties, and you have the Scottish, the couple Scottish parties. They're regional parties. Like I put it that way, they're regional parties. So if those parties didn't exist, they would be, they tend to align with either the Labor or Tories or whoever, So for all intents and purposes, they're effectively independent, independents that effectively run with the others. Britain has really only had two significant parties. Because the Lib Dems have four. The Lib Dems are the leftist party. At least they used to be. I don't know about now, Brian. You could correct me if I'm wrong. But the Lib Dems were kind of like the leftist party. They have 14 seats out of 650. They're irrelevant. I think at their peak they had 57. So they're nowhere. So this idea that we're the only ones, and actually Germany has a much more robust set of parties than we do, or Britain for that matter.
I know what you're going to say, Brian. I'll let you do it.
Okay. Yeah, I will agree with you, Joe. as a snapshot of modern British politics, you're right. We are about as bipolar as we have ever been. But when I was growing up in the 70s, it was very much a three-party system.
Oh yeah.
We have been driven down the route of bipolarism.
Yeah.
And I would say that has definitely been to our detriment.
Yeah.
Um,
Sorry, go ahead.
So
I have
I'm not
something to
going to
say
disagree
about
with
that.
anything that you've said there, and I'm now going to yield to Paul.
Yeah, I have something to say about that. So back in the early 90s, especially, but also throughout the 90s, I was a super big fan of the Liberal Democrats as a party when Patty Ashdown led the party in particular. And when the 1992 election was coming up, and everybody expected that the Labour Party was going to win because John Major was one of the weakest leaders probably in British history, certainly for the 20th century. And anyway, so everyone thought Labour was going to win. And the irony was, I think at that time, the Liberal Democrats had, I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying 12 seats in Parliament. And so that's a pretty steep hill to climb to get into a position of governing, even in a coalition. And Patty Ashdown was a very popular leader of the party. He was doing the rounds in the media. He was very sort of well exposed, considering he was a minority party guy, right? And the irony is, in 1992, there was a massive poll done and said, would you vote for the Liberal Democrats if you thought they could form a government? And almost 43% of people said they would. And if 43% of people voted for Liberal Democrats, they would be the government. Right. So basically, the people in that system had literally been brainwashed into thinking that they couldn't vote for the third party because the third party can't win, when there was enough support for the third party that they actually could have won.
Agreed. That is a paradigm that we got from you guys.
Well, and probably, and it's weird though, because unlike our system, yours, the way you have any parliamentary system is because you have that you have that representation, and because you can have a minority government, there's no reason why, there's no reason not to vote for the party of your choice, because as long as like, especially with the Lib Dems, I gotta believe if Labor or the Lib Dems get in, they're gonna caucus together if that's what it takes to be ahead of the Tories.
Under Patty Ashdown, the Liberal Democrats announced, and this is, I think, the coming up for the 97 election, they announced that they would work with either party. If either party had to form a minority government, they would coalition with either party. And that was pretty much where Patty Ashdown lost his credibility with an awful lot of leftist type of people. Right. And then, of course, 10, 12 years later, they did go into coalition with the Conservatives, who were like more or less diametrically opposed to most of the Liberal Democrat policies. And it was especially true about the student loan thing. Go ahead, Brian.
But that there's a very good reason for that. And that is when Blair got in and the country breathed a sigh of relief. And as you mentioned, I think it was last week. Yeah, when he first got into power.
I was all about it.
He did make some changes that were absolutely Labour.
Yeah, and you noticed the changes within 6 months.
Yeah, and it was noticeable within the year.
Yeah.
But then what he did was he became, in my view, he out-conservatived the Conservative Party.
Yeah,
he actually became more conservative, more of a conservative government than Major had been. Right. And the reason for a lot of people not noticing that is because John Major was so bland and so, I mean, all of the cartoon caricatures of him were as a black and white, shades of gray, because he had no personality, he had no real leadership, no drive. And Blair came in and he just became Thatcher 2.0.
Right. Just as an aside, do you remember on Spitting Image, John Major's puppet was gray?
Great.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Raven? You were waiting to talk.
So well, I've been trying to sit there for a little while. So in 2016, when Bernie Sanders ran for president and he ran as a Democrat, most of the Democrats that I know, most leftists that I know had said, I would totally vote for Bernie Sanders if I thought he could win. And it drove me up the fucking wall because it was just like maybe he wasn't the best man for the job. I thought he was the best candidate running for the job. Um, maybe he was old, New York Jew. Maybe because I'm from Jersey. To me, that just feels like home.
Oh yeah, it is
Hear
home.
a New York Jew speak. So I don't know. All I know is that I knew lots and lots and lots of people who said, "Boy, if I thought he could win, I would vote for him."
And the thing about that, and that mentality goes into what I was talking about to Brian about the liberal Dems as well.
Right, which is
the
why
thing about that is it basically is people admitting they don't believe in democracy. They don't think that democracy will actually deliver their wishes, right?
Well,
because
no, I mean-
otherwise they would vote for that person.
Well, no, because the thing is, okay, Bernie makes the enormous mistake, in my opinion, of calling himself a socialist, especially when he isn't one.
Right.
So, and I know how tainted that word is in America.
Sure.
So my thing was, fine, if he's look, if he was a candidate, I was going to vote for him. Hell, I would do, I would have done anything to get him elected if he had been the candidate. In fact, at one point, I had moved away from Hillary and gone to Bernie. But I ended up not sticking with it. But the thing is that my thing is like I ended up not voting for him in the primary. But I think, and maybe I could be wrong because I don't know who you spoke to and what they said or what the context was. But I think a lot of Democrats would say, yeah, like if I thought he could beat Trump or whoever the Republican was going to be, then I would vote for him to be the candidate. But I think any actual Democrats were going to vote for whoever the Democrats put up. And I think the word you were looking for before, Raven, when you were talking about Occupy, populist.
Yes.
Populist. And that's the reason why there was some overlap between people who supported both Bernie and Trump.
Right.
Because they were both popular.
Well, okay. So there is, how like the local people, to me anyway, are all like Trumpers and right-wing nutcases and all this stuff. So recently, on the internet, I don't remember exactly where I saw it. I think it might have come from TV, but there was a leftist, a guy from the left, put it that way, interviewing a Trump supporter, and the Trump, he's like, "Oh, I don't want the Democrats," or blah 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 blah. But there are certain things we want to see, like we're against like big pharma, and we think that people should have like security in the workplace and healthcare and all this stuff. And it was these are all Democratic platform positions,
right?
And he's like, this is what we want. And the guy doing the interview is just like, oh yeah, you want all of these social programs to help people, and the Trump guy's like, yes, this is what we want. And it's all Democrat stuff. It's all leftist stuff. It's all stuff that you're not going to get if you vote Republican.
Right.
And the local Republicans they've been sharing that as thumping their chest, as see, we're more alike than we are different. Now they're right. I think we are more alike than we are different, but they don't seem to understand that piece is really picking on them.
Right. Right. And the fact that their policies go against all those priorities that people actually want.
Yeah.
I was just about to mention that what Vegas just said, and
okay, so
that's
important. I've been saying since 2016. I was sitting watching the news at the beginnings of the election season, the campaigning season. I'm watching the news, and they said in Vermont, Bernie's home state, the projected winner, right, which before anybody voted anything in a primary, the projected winner for the Republican Party in Vermont was Bernie Sanders, who wasn't a Republican and wasn't running anything Republican there, but the Republicans in Vermont supported Bernie Sanders. So, and I thought at the time, well, holy shit, this is something that may work.
Who was the Republican candidate?
I don't know. Because this was state level.
That would be interesting if they preferred Bernie Sanders over their own candidate. Who was that? That's.
But the thing is, now that's happened before in politics though too, and you have to not miss the fact that also it is his home state, right?
It's his home state.
So you get a home state thing. There was one year, one election in New York City where Ed Koch was the Democratic and Republican candidate for mayor. So the Republicans are like, we don't have any better. Fuck it. Let's go for him again.
But I mean,
just wanted to make. Oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead, go.
I was just gonna say I wanted to comment on the what I just put up on the screen from Autumn about right wingers willing to vote for Bernie. I think part of the thing with that was that in 2016 there was a huge appetite nationally for something that was anti-establishment, someone that was going to shake it up, and I think that is probably why Vegas' statement there is probably true, is because there was an appetite for something different, and there was also, and we've talked about this before. But I mean, even before Hillary ever ran for president, she already had half the country against her because of the time she spent as first lady. Hillary had haters built in, right? And so that, unfortunately for her anyway, was a hindrance that Bernie didn't have. And so Bernie being the new flavor on the block as well, I think to a lot of independents and right-leaning independents especially, were like, yeah, okay, I'll give that a try if they had the chance, but they were never given it.
Yeah.
Over the years, Hillary had said some really stupid shit. Like, it was in the early 90s when Bill was running for president. And in an interview, somebody asked if she was going to work, if she was going to continue to work while being president. And she had said something like, well, I'm not going to sit home and bake cookies. And to all the women in America who stay home and bake cookies, they were insulted.
Were they really, though? Or was that just the way the media spun it?
Yeah, well, that's the
A little
thing.
bit of both.
And to me, that was fairly innocuous because that's the whole point, right? To basically say, hey, just because I'm a woman doesn't mean I'm going to turn into Betty Crocker. See, but part of the problem.
It's not always what you say, though. Sometimes it's how you say it. And she
Of
came
course.
off as dismissive. So if you're one of the people who feels dismissed, you're not going to be happy.
Yeah, although I mean, again, there were certain people that were gunning for both of him and her from the get go, and that part. So she was also suffering from the fact that she was in the public eye for a very long time, You know, the thing is, like with Trump, you know, if you notice, Trump got trounced here in New Jersey, New York. Why? Because he's been in the public eye for 60 years. We know who the fuck he is. We know him, and we don't like him. But you know, so I don't know how many people say, "Oh, well, you just don't like him because of the media." I'm like, dude, I've known who this fucker was for just about my entire life. So you know, don't tell me. But you know, it is hard, and that was always something I was worried about with her. Was that, you know, she just had a lot of people who just flat out didn't like her, and a lot of stuff that would get kind of twisted out of proportion. I mean, for instance, and this is something that a lot of leftists attacked her. She said black people are gang members. No, she fucking didn't.
Oh, she didn't.
And they were super predators. No, she said she was talking about gang members who were super predators. So I told one person flat out, I said, okay, so if you think gang members means black, that's your racism, not hers.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. But I mean, she has years and years and years of things that can be just dissected and pulled apart and twisted. And, you know, she's a person.
Yeah.
It's like every other person.
Right.
The biggest objection over here that I heard of Hillary Clinton when she was running against Trump was that if she got in, then essentially you'd have a warmonger as president of the United States. That was the biggest criticism that we were getting over here.
Yeah. And that's how the left felt, because there are people on the left who think any use of the military ever, regardless of context, makes you a warmonger. The thing is, Hillary made her troops into battle.
I have to push back on that, because I heard Hillary say things that led me to believe that it might be her not desire, but strong intention to flex a little bit and go in on Iran.
Yeah.
I was super afraid that she was going to start shit with Iran. This is in 2008, not 2016.
Yeah.
When she ran for president the first time.
Yeah.
Well, this was kind of, you know, tacked on to what I was just saying. Plus, you also had her husband's legacy as well.
Yeah.
And
who overall at the time, I think was pretty good, except for the rape accusations and some of that stuff. But I mean, he is seen for the most part as a beloved president.
Well, again, most like I say, everything I say is tainted from the UK perspective.
Yeah. And I was going to address Green Machine really quick. You might think it's a dog whistle, but as the only black person on the panel and in the room, no. And this is one thing that I find sometimes, and this is something that like conversations that none of you guys hear that black people have when you guys aren't around. That there's stuff that white people do and say that in their head, I'm sure, is defending us, and we don't see it that way. I've told you before, it hasn't happened in a while, but I've had people on the political left tell me that they didn't think of me as black because I speak this way and I don't listen to certain music, and I'm like, wait, no, you're saying I don't a stereotype of black people that you have in your head, and you say this to me like it's a fucking compliment. That's
Joe, you're black?
Yeah, I'm not Mexican.
I've been operating under the Mexican.
Despite what Richard Coughlin likes to joke about, but so no, you're wrong, Green. It wasn't a dog whistle. If you heard that, that was you. That was you.
There's also certain levels of awareness when it comes to racial prejudice. I mean, when you grow up like I did in a very white bread area, right? And I very much as a young man, especially wanted not to be considered a racist. My dad was a bigot, and I looked at his example and I'm like, well, I don't want to turn out like that. Right. But there's also a situation where if you don't have experience of people from different parts of the culture, you end up inevitably, I ended up anyway, when I first got out into the big wide world, perhaps I overcompensated a little bit, which people then accuse me that they say that is racist because you're trying so hard not to be racist, right? And so there's level of racial awareness.
I know where you're going, Raven. I can see the look on your face. And go there because I know what you're going to say. Please.
Whilst I was like aware that I didn't want to be racist, I wasn't necessarily given any examples of how not to be. And so like my very first I was acquainted with plenty of black people growing as a young adult, but my very first true friend is a black fella. One time I said to him, hey, Kevin, I love you so much, man. And I don't really think of you as black. And he's like, well, Paul, I am black. Right. And this was my level of racial prejudice awareness, because I was trying to say that you're not my black friend, because like a token black friend, right. You're my friend, and you being black doesn't stop you from being my friend is where I was coming from. And Kevin knew that about me, but gently explained to me why what I just said was profoundly racist. Right. What were you going to say, Joe?
Yeah, because he's trying to save you from an ass kicking from somebody who didn't know who you were.
Right. Or just basically if someone has good intentions and where their heart is coming from, but they have not been necessarily educated or aware enough because of, like I say, I grew up in a completely white area, man. I didn't have any experience of people other than the minorities where I come from were Mexicans, but are probably Californian really, but they're Mexicans, Anyway, so that was where I grew up.
So let me start by saying I also grew up in a very white neighborhood. Like when Joe comes to see me, I will tell him, don't speed. Don't speed. You don't want to get bored.
When I visit Raven, wherever I'm standing is the black neighborhood.
Yeah. I mean, it's that's just the way it is, And when I started dating Peach, I also, had to face a lot of the racism that I had no idea that I was carrying. And I have found it's a good idea to self-examine every now and then and realize, hey, I'm still carrying around this bullshit. Let me get rid of it. So that's fine. That's kind of, a lot of white people have to kind of go through that. If they're close, they should go through it anyway. But I mean, if you're close to people of a different race, you have to do that. Joe and I have a mutual friend. I'm going to give fake examples to demonstrate the point I'm trying to make here. So this friend um, wants to make sure that everyone knows that they are not racist. And the way they go about it ends up being really cringeworthy. Things like, oh, I fed the family black food yesterday because black food is such good food, and my black friends would all appreciate that we had this black meal. And it's just like, oh my God, what are you doing? Or my child made a new friend who is black. Their black friend, and we like them so much. They're at our house every day. I am so proud of my child for having for knowing a black person. I mean, it's that kind of stuff. And it's just like that just sounds so racist. And it's like I get what they're doing, I get what they're saying, but it's like you gotta back up a little bit.
Oh, and that person found out that they actually have one black ancestor.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, they did. It's like they're 1/32 black.
Right, okay. And my people.
Yeah, well,
exactly.
Like that's cool. You know.
And I mean, it is what it is. I guess I think that maybe most people it would just go over their heads.
Right.
Well, it's just, to me, it just sticks out like a.
Yeah. Well, and the other part is there's the patronizing. On the left, bigotry usually comes off as patronism. I think that's the word. You know what I'm talking about. Being patronizing. So
Joe, I promise to never patronize you or deny you your birthright from your Mexican heritage.
Thank you. So for instance, I mentioned this before, after Trump got elected and it was like the safety pin, and it's like all these white people were like, I'm gonna wear a safety pin so that black and brown people know that I'm a safe person they could come talk to. Like we're all like, oh Lordy, I'm so worried about Trump. Where's the nearest white person I can go to make me feel safe?
On the surface, the safety pin thing on the surface seems like, okay, well, this is a pretty good thing. You're showing solidarity with people who are not just black and brown people, but just like anybody who is in a marginalized group. Being somebody who, is a part of a couple of different marginalized groups, I thought it was a good idea. When you pointed out what was wrong with it, and I stopped to think about it, I said, "Oh shit, that's kind of fucked up." I get it. So,
it was also appropriating from punk culture something that people would stick on themselves to signify something else entirely. There were already safety pins being used to signal people for something completely different.
Yeah.
In punk culture. And those people that are oblivious to subcultures and other people's cultures, they thought that they were being original by putting a safety pin on them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it comes from a different time, where that was something that was done for the same reason. So it was something they thought they were just bringing back. And then, like I said, on the surface, it seemed fine. It seemed harmless. It seemed like it might be a decent idea. But when it was laid out, it was just like, oh yeah, that's actually kind of cringy. Yeah.
So I just want to address what Brian had in the comments here, because I think it's important. I think it's a good question, and I think it deserves an answer. So Brian, you said that you didn't understand how the concept of eradicating racism by focusing on race. Okay, so here's a piece of context that you wouldn't be aware of. I don't focus on race. I live in a culture that does, whether I want to or not. And so, for instance, I've had people ask me like, what do I identify? Because I'm a mixed heritage, I'm technically 55% European, right? So the people will ask me, well, do I identify as white or do I identify as black? Not a choice for me to make in this country. I don't have the choice because I look like this. No one in this culture would accept me as white, regardless of the fact that my ancestry is Northern and I grew up in a white neighborhood and all that. I grew up in a culture that identifies me and others me. So I'm aware of it because I have to live it. But it's not something I prefer not to focus on it. And I don't really focus, but it's thrust upon me. So it's one of those things where basically what's happened now is it's not a problem that can go away by ignoring it, because whether or not we talk about it, it's still there. The racism is still there, whether we talk about it or not. Unfortunately, the rhetoric of racist has become, oh, well, the real racists are the people who keep talking about race. Like, no, the real racists are the people who do and say racist shit. The difference now is that there's black people have enough, and other marginalized, minority groups have enough political power now that we can actually freely express this without fear of really being like, the government and government like forces coming down on us. Because if you look back, what happened when we were marching for rights in the 60s and the 50s and 40s, and they had dogs and water cannons. Now they just use the police as slave catchers. And the fact that if you get stopped by the cops may be mean to you and nasty, but the cops may kill me simply because they're afraid I might have a gun, even if they pull me over for something trivial. So whether or not I talk about it, that's just a fact of life of living in America. That's the reason why it's out there, because we as a group and our supporters have said enough of this shit. We has to stop.
Until I was probably about 50 years old, I had a strong opinion that the best way to deal with racial prejudice is to not be racially prejudiced, and to teach my children not to be racially prejudiced, and to encourage other people to not be racially prejudiced, and to teach their children not to be racially prejudiced. And I have since been convinced that it is at least as important to be vocally anti-racist when you hear or see racist behavior, because unfortunately, it is that kind of social pressure is still necessary. Unfortunately, I thought I would have liked to think that it wasn't as necessary, but whether it's just the permissiveness that Trump has been given people to be more licentious with their racism, What are you going to say, Brian?
Yeah, I was going to ask Joe, being, purely and simply because nobody else here on the panel has probably got a legitimate answer for this.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, bearing in mind the second part of my comment, where, that approach is seen these days as being part of the problem, as Paul articulated probably better than I did.
Right.
How does one these days be vocally anti-racist without falling into that trope of, I can't be racist because?
Well, I guess that's just it. I mean, as much as, because here's the thing. Now, I don't agree with the sentiment that only white people can be racist. I think that, now I think part of it is what's happened is people have substituted discrimination for racism. Only people in power can discriminate, because obviously if you have no power, your discrimination means nothing. But I, as a point example I made of, if well, here's I'll take it. Okay, a white guy killing a Korean guy in St. Louis because the Korean guy's Korean, we all recognize that was racist. If the same white guy goes to Korea and kills a Korean guy because he hates Korea, because the Korean guy's Korean, it's still just as racist, even though we're in a society now where white people are not the majority and don't have the power.
So how does that? Okay, so that, to my rational brain, that kind of nullifies the, okay, racism needs to be from a position of power. And just to add to that, okay, a lot of the racism we see is at the grassroots. It's at the street level. It's not from government, except in the United States, obviously, where there's a lot of institutional aspects.
Now I think what happens, people are starting to get better at the definitions, and now what they're talking about, systemic racism. Systemic racism is something that happens on a societal level, and that can only happen. Systemic racism can only happen coming from the people in power.
Right.
So that's a differentiator for me. So now
What
the other thing.
Just on that point, Joe, what do you think about the fact that we've had generations now of people from minority groups in positions of power, and the systemic racism has not been really functionally addressed.
Yeah, well, see, here's the thing, and this is why, like, I've tried to explain to some people who were very disappointed in Obama. I understood. I guess I would say I was disappointed that he didn't get more done, but I completely understand why he didn't.
Sure.
Because you're in peril. Like I could go out and do something, and if just say, and I'll say Mike, because Mike's a U.S. citizen. I wouldn't say Brian, or you for that matter, Paul.
Okay.
How you are going to be judged, how Mike's going to be judged, versus if I do the exact same thing is different, because in part of those unconscious biases. So there's been limits to what Black people do. Like look at a guy like Al Sharpton. Think about how vilified and pilloried and dismissed Al Sharpton has been for 40 years. He's been saying the same shit.
Right.
Now all of a sudden everybody's talking like Al Sharpton. But I remember, like, it used to be like, and if you were a Black person and you were very, vocal and stuff like that, you're like, oh, it sounds like you're getting all Al Sharpton on me. People literally said shit like that.
Yeah.
So we're in that milieu where we're basically everything we do is viewed through that lens, and and white society as a whole has been petrified of us in tons of ways, including having power. It was kind of amazing. The only reason why Obama got elected is because George W. Bush was so fucking bad that people wanted to and didn't want more of the same. They saw McCain as more of the same.
Well, the rhetoric was change, right? I mean, that was his basic slogan, was just change. And I think there's always a hunger for change when things get too established and comfortable. I also think, I mean, it goes without saying almost, but I mean, he is a very impressive orator. And he was saying things that were, both correct and politically correct that other politicians weren't saying. Like, I'm thinking about stuff, for example, he gave a speech in a church on Father's Day about fatherhood. What politician does that? Who talks about that level of societal issue? I mean, you just don't really see that. So that was a breath of fresh air for someone like me.
Right.
And for me personally, I bought it and was duped, but I totally believed he was going to close Guantanamo. I totally believed he was going to end the Iraq war within 6 months. All that stuff, I fell for all that stuff. And I know the machinations of government are what they are. And I get it. You don't have to rehearse all that again.
Right.
But I really believed that stuff was going to happen. And I kind of felt duped.
He's a Black man in the public eye. Speaking about fatherhood, is a socially important message. It's a very important message to the Black community in this country. And also, as a Black man saying it, it buys him white cred.
Right.
Right.
So, I mean, it makes sense for him to have that.
Yeah. Because there's a belief, it turns out statistically to not be true, but there's a belief that Black men as a whole are absent fathers and all the Black children are growing up with no fathers around. Now, what is true is that there's a higher rate of unmarried births, where the child's born to an unmarried couple, but unmarried couple. So it has you changing attitudes in the Black community about marriage, not necessarily that fathers are not participating. And they've done studies on this to show, actually, no, it's the participation rate's about the same between white fathers and Black fathers, but there's a perception. So he had to say that, whether he thought of it or not, because that was the only way that a Black man can get by. And then you look at what happened on the right. Now, here's the interesting thing. The first time Obama won Iowa, he won North Carolina, he won a lot of states that Democrats don't traditionally win. But then the reality set in, because the white supremacist part of our society, that 25-30% of our society, like once he was in, it was like, oh my God, there's a Black man in charge. And if you look at all the shit that they said, I mean, when he was running for re-election, I saw a bumper sticker. It's a real bumper sticker. I did find it where I could buy it. It said, "Don't renege," not renege. And that's
I saw those bumper stickers.
You saw that. It was this idea that, oh my God, how the hell did we let a Black man in charge? And that's why we got that's the main reason why we got Trump. That's the main reason.
Sure.
It's one of the main reasons why we allowed Congress to basically break the country too. Like they intentionally, if we can't run it, or if a black man has run this country, then we might as well break it.
Yeah.
There was
Wow.
also another big element to Trump getting in, and that was the fact that he was also promising change.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, and there's plenty of things that, we've discussed before. I mean, I'm not a huge Obama fan, but I'm also not an Obama hater. But for me personally, the things I personally cared about, the Iraq war, Guantanamo, and just as an aside, when Obama took the reins of the presidency, we were at war in Afghanistan and Iraq. By the time he ended the presidency, we were dropping drone bombs on 7 countries, right? And that was kind of the opposite of what I thought I was going to get from Obama,
I'm not sure if I totally answered Brian's question from before. So,
No, not totally, but yeah, you covered.
Well, I mean, I can explain if you're still part you're not sure about. I'm happy to
Well, there's in the core of my being, yeah. And I understand what Galen was saying about it being a very simplistic attitude, but I did mention Morgan Freeman and him saying, "Don't call me a black man, just call me a man." Yeah. Now, at my core, that is how I've always been. I mean, I dealt with whatever racism I may have had when I was between 12 and 14. Yeah. And since then, at my core, I've always been, well, you're just another person.
Yeah.
Same as me. You've got the same rights. You've got the same goals. You've got the same joys, the same hatreds, the same. You're a human being, same as me. And I've always lived my life with that being at my core. So here I am in 2022, and I find myself in a position, and I'm going to be a little bit hyperbolic here, okay? But I find myself in a position whereby all the things, all the core values that I have are being held up one by one and having their butts slapped as being internally racist or this, that, or other inherent bias.
Well, here's how.
It's not just grating; it's also on a certain level insulting to me.
I get what you're saying, and I'm going to say what I've said to you before. Imagine how it feels on this side.
Right.
Absolutely, and that's part of the reason why I have the core values, because I did put myself in that position at the age of 12.
Right. So I guess what I would say is that is the right way to treat people, right? But that doesn't mean the other stuff. It's kind of like we said before, like about the focus. It's basically, it's really more of it's necessary to recognize that those things still persist. They're still a factor in society, regardless of the fact that you treat people as people and you don't discriminate.
Agreed.
The fact that we still live in a society that does, and so that's the thing to recognize. So it's like, yeah, I don't, it's not like I said, I don't go around all day, but it is something. So I guess the best thing that you can do, well, first of all, is when people are taking those core values and smacking them, I would say be introspective, see if there's anything you can learn about what's being said.
Yeah, every time it happens, I do. I generally spend a few days, and a lot of it happens internally, subconsciously. And I'll get little revelations that sort of pop in, like little epiphanies. But as how do I phrase this? The way Morgan Freeman said it, and I just gave a little snippet, but the whole thing gave it context and fleshed it out. But idealistically, if everybody on this panel, everybody who's watching, the entire world were to take that approach, were to actually enact that, okay, for as long as it takes to actually become the norm, that would cure so many of society's ills.
Before you comment, Joe, let me just say, because what Brian said reminded me when I was a brand new person in the UK and I had a little niece who was like just over a year old at the time, and she was looking through a kitty book, and there was a picture of a black fellow in the book, and she pointed to the character in the book and said, "Man." And her mother said, "Yes, Joanne, that's a black man." And at the time, I was like, why did you have to make that distinction? She saw him as every other man.
Yeah.
Right. But Joe, was I wrong to think that? You know, is it important to make that distinction as early as possible and understand? I'm not sure how I think.
Yeah, that's a tough question. That really is, and because I was thinking, you reminded me of an interaction I had in a mall years ago. I was in a department store, and I saw this woman. She's probably like late 20s, early 30s, attractive, and we locked eyes, and she had a young child, 3 year, probably 3, and the little kid said, "Mommy, is that a black man?" And she was like mortified and embarrassed, and she's like, "Oh," and she said, "No." Don't tell him no. That's not true.
Right,
That's
a different
okay.
statement, yeah.
The child doesn't know. The child's trying to understand and learn. So what the important thing to learn is, like I said, it all comes down to that context. So I think, so I guess here's the other thing too, with as far as Morgan Freeman goes, kind of because it also goes to answer your question. Yes, that's the ideal. That's the world we need to get to. But because we have to recognize we also don't live in that world. So you can change, you can, behave that way, and that's the right way to behave. But with that eye of understanding, also, and this is one thing I point out to men sometimes when it comes to women's issues and the way women react, way sometimes feminists will react. They'll say, well, a man will do something, and they were honestly, legitimately not, certainly not intentionally being sexist, but, and even if you listen to it, probably wasn't. But I also understand the context that the odds were in her favor of guessing that it was. So I've learned not to take it personally, because again, the odd, even so, just say if something I've done, well, I can see that, well, no, because I know it was in my head, right? So I know what my intentions are, and I know what the point I'm trying to make, but maybe it gets misperceived. But the odds were in her favor, and she also defensively needs to. It's better for her to guess wrong in that direction than the other direction, because the other direction could literally get her killed.
Yeah. Now, there is a there is a slight distinction in those two examples. One is the from Paul's example, you've got the adult inserting the adjective, yeah, whereas in your example you've got the adult reacting to the insertion of the adjective. So I and as you brought trans issues into things, into sex, I'd like to ask you and Raven the same question, only it's going to be translated for your circumstances. Okay,
translated.
Now, Joe, I love you as a brother. Okay, we have our differences, brothers do that. But would you prefer that I treat you as a man or as a black man? And the question that I would ask Raven, so that you both have the same opportunity, would you prefer me to treat you as a woman or a trans woman?
I think those are two very different questions.
Well, it's the same insertion of an adjective.
I want to take a stab at answering both.
Okay.
Can I do that, Joe?
You go first.
Okay, so I'll answer both. So for me, right, I would prefer that you treated me as a woman, because I am a woman. Because what a woman is a societal and cultural fabrication of what a man or a woman is. That's created by society. And me as a person, I fall better into that category than I do a man, regardless of what my biology says. So I would prefer if you treated me as a woman, not a trans woman. For Joe, it would be better that you treat him as a black man, because black and that identification and recognizing that he's a black man carries with it the history of black people in this country going back for hundreds of years. And to lose sight of that is to ignore or to not understand where he stands as a person today as a result of the way this country has treated people of color, black people specifically,
And
since
continue to do so.
and continues to do so, but since its inception. And to drop the black, to drop that, loses sight of all of that. So it's important. It matters, and that's why it's included.
Right.
Now,
And
Joe, I'd like
also,
to
also,
answer
let me,
this
I
one,
want,
but when you have, I
How
would
did I
like to come
do?
back.
How did I do? Did I do good? Did I
you did extremely well. I want to add one more additional thing.
Mhm.
Also, treating me as a black man and as a man are not mutually exclusive.
Oh, yeah. With that caveat on board. Now, the reason why, and I think this is why you actually crossed that Rubicon, Joe, yeah, is because a lot of the struggles, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of the struggles that trans people are currently going through is, although not equable, yeah, it's part of the translation, yeah, between those two contexts.
I think the common factor is there's bigotry against both groups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
it's only sort of the length of time that it's been happening that distinguishes the bigotry against trans people from the bigotry against black people.
I'd say it's been happening just as long against trans people. It just hasn't been an issue in the public eye.
Okay, yeah.
I would agree with that. I would also say that a better example, as far as like a better analogy, a better comparison, would be gay men. The experience for gay men in this country, in a lot of ways, parallels the experience of black people in this country. Not so much with gay women, but with gay men specifically.
I would say that that's probably true globally. I mean, in this country,
like in this country, there are lynchings of both black people and gay men.
Yes,
they're and they went on to fairly recently for both for both groups. There's the public disgust, and I mean it's a much better parallel.
Just to put some of that into perspective a little bit as well, again from UK perspective, but it was only the 1960s that being gay was decriminalized. Yeah, so being black in this country was never something that you were automatically criminalized for. Whereas in the States, I can see there is an argument to be made that if you were born black, yeah, in a lot of circumstances, you are destined for the judicial system. Yeah. Again, that's why I don't necessarily see it as a bad parallel to draw. And this is why I asked that specific question, because if including that stigma in your, and again, it's not mutually exclusive. Yeah. And that's why I phrased it as, would you prefer me to treat you as? Because ideally, as you've explained, you would want to be treated as a woman because that's how you fit into society. Yeah. But the biological fact is that you are a trans woman. As far as Joe's concerned, ideally, he would want to be treated within. I apologize for the phraseology.
If you say anything that's wrong, I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Listen, friends, I just want to put up the flag and say I want to end the show at 3 hours. Okay, just so y'all know.
Yeah, I'm nearly done. So yeah, kind of threw me off the rail. Yes, as far as fitting in society, the reality is in the United States, you fit and operate in society as a black man. So that's a descriptor.
It's irreducible minimum.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the thing. So yeah.
Ideally, as we were saying, yeah, Morgan Freeman's approach, that approach is the ideal. And what I'm trying to get at is, how do we get there by perpetually focusing on And I know we're kind of going round in a circle, but the way I see it, one more individual that lives their life in the ideal of treating you as a man rather than a black man is one step closer to that ideal world.
Well, again, part of the problem is that, and I've said this before, we're never going to solve racism in the United States or anywhere for that matter. But particularly, I'm going to keep it to the U.S. context because it gets way more complicated once we get into other cultures. But at least in the United States, until white society as a whole is willing to have some very uncomfortable conversations. And here's one of the things that comes up a lot, and this is the reason why I think it's important that we keep having the conversation, even though it upsets people. There are a lot of white people, again, they don't want to have that conversation because they think the conversation is you as an individual are bad because of some white people in the past, what they did and the policies they set up. No, not at all. You personally, Mike and Paul and we're not and Raven, we're not responsible for the society, making the society what it has been and what it is today, right? But to address the issues requires acknowledgement that these issues exist. There are a lot of people who don't want to admit that these things exist. They'll say on the one hand, oh yeah, well, there's still racism, but then they'll resist and rebuff any attempts to actually do anything on a policy level or even a personal level to make those changes, to get toward where you're at. For instance, one of the big things, like here's a big problem with again, and I think probably the biggest reason why people give you a hard time about it, Brian. We've talked before in this panel about generational wealth. Yeah. Generational wealth was robbed from black people for 350 years. So as a result, as a group, we're far poorer. We have far less wealth. Even the average wealth of the average family is dwarfed by the average white family. It's not even close. It's more than an order of magnitude. Well, so if you just pretend that, if we just nicer to each other, all that's going to go away, it's not.
So we can as a society, we can drop the black before the man or woman once we take care of all of those problems that we have created for ourselves over the last few hundred years. And individually, enough people in our society do some of the things that I've done where I've had to examine my prejudices that I had no idea I was carrying and that I was forced to face because I fell in love with somebody who's not white.
And would you say
that? Then you can see
as a trans woman that has actually happened within society for you, which is why you're comfortable to be treated as a woman rather than a trans woman?
I am. That's the thing. It is like what I would prefer and what's ideal isn't what the reality is. I am scared to death constantly. I go to the store and I am terrified on my way in and on my way out that I'm going to be jumped, that I'm going to be beat up, that I'm going to be confronted by people screaming at me, because it happens every day to trans women in this country.
So being treated as a woman is part of your disguise?
I'm sorry?
So being treated as a woman rather than a trans woman is part of your defense?
But there is no disguise. Like, I want to be treated as a woman because that's what I am.
Yeah, disguise was the wrong word. That's why I changed it to defense.
Right. But even that's not the right word, because I want to be treated as a woman, not as a defense, but because that's what I am. The problem is because actually some people think I've become actually rather passable. I don't know, because I still see me in the mirror. But I mean, for people who look at me and don't see a woman, right? They're a threat to me, right? Every time I go out, I am in danger. Right.
Okay. But you say half of me is seeing a lot of these arguments applicable to Joe as well. But yes, Mike.
Right.
Mike.
I just wanted to tell you, Brian, that Stephen Colbert, when he was doing his shtick on the Colbert Report, the parody of a Republican commentator, he used to throw in this running gag of because I don't see color. He would say that a lot, and it just echoed through my entire history growing up with white people because I heard it so many times. And the point of that, like pointing out that phrase, was because there's so many people in our country who do want to fast forward without doing the work. They want to live as though we're in that utopia without correcting the problems of right now.
And on an individual level, doing that work is doing that self-reflection. It doesn't mean that you're a terrible person. It doesn't mean you did something wrong. But if you're carrying around racist ideas, it's because they were put there. Right. I mean, it doesn't happen by accident. They were put there. Like nobody is born going, black people suck.
About.
What was that?
They were put there by the mother that Paul was talking about earlier.
Right. Who got it from their family.
I disagree actually, but
by your society, like these
solely by her, obviously.
No. But what I'm saying is depending, because I would need more context, because what else does she teach that child about the black man?
Sure.
That's
just that one statement.
True.
Yeah, that one statement alone is not the problem. It is what else did she teach? What else?
I think is the point.
Right, but that's kind of the point, though. Like, you're not born with that. You learn it from the society around you, and most of the time, the stuff that you hold on to the longest and you cling to the tightest is the stuff that you learn when you're younger. The younger you are when you learn it, the more likely you are to hang on to it for dear life. Right. And when you watch some of these people who were outraged that Obama was president, they're still outraged by it. Well, they were taught that crap when they were babies, when they were little. For them, it's air. They don't know the difference.
Right.
So
the thing is, Brian. So I guess what I'm saying is, you and I believe you. I agree with you, and I believe you that you treat everybody the same, which is a good thing. But again, like Raven says, the society, not you personally, but the society has to do the work, and it hasn't done. And so all the people that are not racist can go around and not being racist all they want. That's not going to stop. That's not going to make the racists go away.
In order for the society to change, though, it takes individual people doing the work individually.
Right.
How do you make that happen?
Right. You have to.
That's what we've been tripping on for the last.
Right. And think about what Raven said before. Raven said she had some biases that she was unaware of. Until she was confronted by those biases, she had no idea they existed. I look at myself. I look at biases, sexist biases I had. Now, I grew up in here. It's going to sound funny, but I think because you're a little bit older than me, but we're around the same age, and so we grew up again in a very even though different societies, but similar enough. So I grew up to actually revere women. Women were on a pedestal. That's sexist too. That's not treating a woman as an equal. That's treating her as an object. True. But I didn't ever see it that way because that's how I was brought up. That somehow I was being good to women by putting them on a pedestal. No, I wasn't being good to women. That was sexist. But it took me a long time before I saw it that way. But then once I did, then I realized, and then I started, the wheels started turning, and I started looking at everything else in the way I treated women, and okay. And here's the funny part about it is there were a lot of men, and I was no different, that when they had that thing, once you start objectifying a woman in that bizarre way, it also allows you to objectify her in other ways. And I was loaded. And now, was that my fault? No, I grew up in a society that's sexist, that taught me a lot of sexist bullshit.
Also, when you revere black people for being black or black culture, if you have like a reverence for it that is unjustified, that's just as racist as like our mutual friend that we were talking about before.
How do you justify liking music, for example? How do you justify that? I mean,
it's not about liking music. It's not about liking music. It's saying that black music is superior because it's black music. That's racist. That's just as racist as saying it's terrible because it's black.
There's an issue sometimes with the fetishization, particularly of Asians and Asian culture. They call them weeboos, where basically they have this like ridiculous thing, and they idolize everything Asian, and not in a way that's healthy. It's a way that's objectifying.
Right.
And that's not
because
good enough.
we're coming up for 3 hours, and I know Paul wants to stop, but it's just an important thing, and I think this may help a lot of people that are struggling with this type of processing. Now, the paradigms that we grew up with, Joe, that put women on a pedestal, now that could be typified in you don't hit women. Now, when I heard that, yeah, my brain processed it as, well, why the fuck would you hit anybody?
Right.
Right.
Right. You shouldn't hit
I
anybody.
want to be put on a pedestal. I want motherfuckers opening door for me. I do.
That's sweet.
Right,
folks. Well, I think I will take this opportunity to. I mean, we could just go on about this topic forever because it's an inexhaustible source of and requirement need for understanding on these topics. And so, anytime you want to revisit this, is fine with me. But for now, I want to stop it because I do want to have a bit of an after show, and then I have duties I have to attend. So anyway, thank you all for coming. Thank you everybody in the chat for being so good natured and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, we'll see you next time on the Dinner Club. Say goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.